בימים עגומים של פרעות ועמים בלילות השמונים של ינון. בערים בכפרים את דגלנו נרים ועליו הגנה וחינות. יעשנו פשוט כהמון עבדים ולשתות במחאה לדבר. ברצוננו להיות לעולם נבואים, חלומנו למות בארצנו. בימים אדומים של פרעות ודמים, בלילות השחורים של ינון. בערים בכפרים את דגלנו נרים ועליו הגנה וחינות.
באוויר הרים צלול כיין, וריח אורנים, נישא ברוח הערביים, עם כל פעמונים. ובתרדמת אילן באבן, שבויה בחלומה, העיר אשר בדד יושבת, ובליבה חומה. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. איכה יבשו בורות המים, כיכר השוק ריקה, ואין פוקדת הר הבית בעיר העתיקה. ובמערות אשר בסלע והלילות רוחות, ואין יורד אל ים המלח בדרך יריחו. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. אך בבואי היום לשיר לך ולך לקשור כתרים, חתומתי מצעיר בדייך ומאחרון המשוררים. כשמך צורבת השפתיים כנשיקת זרב, אם אשכחך ירושלים אשר כולה זהב. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור.
Okay, Shabbat Shalom and welcome to the World Alliance of Qara'im Shabbat Torah study. This is Parshat Yitro, and I am Hakham Melech ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im. What does it mean to be a Chacham? In my opinion, it means not to know everything, because we can never know everything, but it means to know something, hopefully, and to make an earnest attempt to learn Torah, to study it every single day, to come to honest conclusions about what it means, and to constantly be modifying, refining, our ideas, growing, admitting when we're right, admitting when we're wrong. And this is the only way to increase one's knowledge of anything, and but especially Torah, because it is insane for us to think that that any of us can understand the entire Torah, the ways of God. I was listening earlier this week to the book of Job. I've taken upon myself lately, I'm constantly listening, reading the Tanakh, listening to the Tanakh, listening to lectures. That's honestly what I spend most of my free time doing. And earlier this week, in the past month or so, I've taken upon myself to go through the entire cycle of the Tanakh and listen to it listen to the audio version of it in English, because it's just not readily available in Hebrew. So I was listening earlier this week to the book of Job. And one of the things, so people, if you ask people, what is the book of Job about? Most of them will say, oh, it's faith during suffering. It's having trust in Yahweh. It's not, praising God even when he doesn't do what you hope. As Job said, should we only accept the good from God and not the bad things? And most of all, most people say that the book of Job is raising the question and attempting to answer the question as to why bad things happen to good people. Because Job is one of the very good people. In fact, in the book of Ezekiel a number of times mentions, speaking about Jerusalem, even if these three people, and he mentions three people, two of them non-Israelites, Noah, Job, and Daniel. So all three of them never lived in the land of Israel, right? Noah lived up in Arad is where he ended up, right? At least when the ark rested. But Job lived in the land of Uz, in the land of Oz, run by that famous wizard named the Wizard of Oz. And Daniel lived in Babylon, right? So none of these three people ever lived in the land of Israel, but they are mentioned by Yecheskel, by Ezekiel, a number of times as three righteous people who, even if they were to plead to Yahweh to save the city of Jerusalem, Ezekiel says he would not do it. And then he goes on a number of times to list all of the crimes of Jerusalem. And none of them are things like not putting on tefillin or not, praying the Shemona Esrei with enough kavanah. No, it's all things like murder, spilling blood, lending money with high interest, having relations with women during their period, stuff like that we see in the Torah. Never once does he mention any of the nonsense of rabbinical Judaism as being important to why Jerusalem is being destroyed. More proof is that if there isn't enough, there isn't a lick of rabbinical Judaism in all of the Torah, except where rabbinical Judaism overlaps the written Torah. Okay, I got off on a little tangent. Let me get back on. What was I saying? I was speaking about the book of Job, and I was saying that most people, when they're asked what is the book of Job, what's the essence of the book of Job, what is the question that it's trying to answer, most people will incorrectly say that it's trying to answer the question, why do bad things happen to good people? Why does suffering happen to good people? Because Job is considered a righteous person, and throughout the entire book of Job, he defends himself as a righteous person, even though his friends come along and try to tell him, no, you're not a righteous person, because God would never punish a truly righteous person. And the reason you're being punished is because you're not a righteous person. Okay, and Job insists throughout the book that he is a righteous person, and it is Yahweh, it's God, who is unfairly punishing him. Okay, in the end, Yahweh, in the famous ending, Yahweh comes to him in a whirlwind and then gives this long poem, this long speech about where were you when the earth was formed, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth, etc. And basically what Yahweh is saying, he chastises Job's friends, he defends Job and says, yes, Job is right, he was a righteous person. And why, therefore, did I, Yahweh, punish Job? Ehiyeh asher ehiyeh. I have my reasons, and I don't have to give my reasons to anyone. I don't have to explain myself to anyone. You were not here when I made the foundations of the earth. You were not here when I laid out the heavens and I laid out the earth. And then he goes through this long poem of all his wisdom and all the things he's done and how long he's been around, much longer than any of us ever were and ever will be. And so basically Yahweh says Job is right. He is a righteous person, but I punished him anyway. Why? Because I have my reasons, and I don't have to explain my reasons to anybody. And in fact, he criticizes Job's friends, because what were Job's friends trying to do? They thought they were defending Yahweh. They thought Job was insulting Yahweh, and they thought they were defending Yahweh. But they were not really defending Yahweh. They were trying to place Yahweh into a box of what he should and should not do. They were trying to say Yahweh should do this because if he is doing this against a righteous person, he's acting wrong. They're telling Yahweh what he should and shouldn't do. And Yahweh, God, got very offended by this, was upset by this, and told Job to pray for his friends, because Job was correct in saying, I was a righteous person, and Yahweh punished me anyway. Okay, so the real essence of the book of Job is not answering the question, or it does answer the question, why do bad things happen to good people? And the answer it gives is, I, Yahweh, have my reasons, and I don't have to explain myself to anybody. And that's it. That's the answer, okay? But the point is, the real essence of the book of Job is the fact that Job defended himself, he defended his righteousness, and he insisted that Yahweh was punishing a righteous person. So the essence of the book of Job is, first of all, it answers the question, or it relates to the question of the name Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. I am who I am. I will be who I will be. I do what I see fit is doing, and I don't have to explain myself to anyone. That's the essence of the book of Job. But it also, the secondary essence of the book of Job is that Job held steadfastly to his own innocence and never ever opened his mouth to curse, bless Yahweh, quote unquote, bless, right? That's what it's said in the book of Job, because we never want to say directly to curse and then the name. Okay, so Job, the essence of the book of Job is to have total faith in Yahweh, even when you think Yahweh is treating you incorrectly, when you know that Yahweh is treating you incorrectly. He's not treating you according to your deeds, but he's treating you for another reason. But nonetheless, not to open your mouth, not to criticize Yahweh, certainly not to curse him. And that's the essence of the book of Job. It's undying faith in Yahweh, no matter what the circumstances. And that's why by Ezekiel, by Cheskel, Job is placed in the same categories, mentioned in the same sentence as Noah, who also had undying faith in Yahweh by building the ark, and Daniel, who also had undying faith in Yahweh by a number of things, right? By, for instance, when he was thrown into the lion's den after being caught praying 3 times, facing Jerusalem, being caught praying 3 times, and he's thrown into the lion's den, and he comes out the next day unscathed. And then those who accused him or who turned him in, who snitched on him, they're thrown into the lion's den. They actually, their families and their children, their wives and their children are thrown in the lion's den, and they're devoured instantaneously by the lions. These are 3 examples of people who had faith in Yahweh. Okay. All right. So how do we get onto this? I do this sometimes. That's my imperfection. Yes, I was saying that what does it mean to be a Chacham? It's not to know everything, but to know that you don't know everything, and to constantly be learning, constantly be trying to grow, constantly using your knowledge and your understanding of Torah. And I thank my lucky stars every day. I thank Yahweh every day that I'm a Karaite and not a Rabbinite, because the Rabbinites, they spend so much time on nonsense, on utter nonsense, studying their Talmud, studying their Kabbalah, studying every spit that comes out of every mouth of anyone over the years in any dark galut that has tried to give their opinions on the Torah. And thank God, I as a Karaite, and I hope other Karaites as well, we focus on Torah, we focus on the Tanakh. And so every bit of Torah that we learn, every bit of Tanakh we learn is the real thing, not the fake thing. I used to say, actually, I think I have it on my website, Karaite Insights, as one of the little quotes on top, which I made many years. Somehow I would probably take down now, but whatever. I think one of them is, if not, then it's something I've been saying for years, is you can spend an entire day in a rabbinical yeshiva and not learn one bit of Torah. And I mean that very seriously. I've spent many days in rabbinical yeshivas where you could sit for hours and hours and hours and learn nonsense, like the laws of tefillin, hilchot tefillin, okay, or hilchot Shabbat, where they put all these ridiculous laws on Shabbat, okay, or all kinds of ridiculous Kabbalistic interpretations. I remember, I always give this example. I sat in the yeshiva of one rabbi from Hakham Melech many years ago, who started his own yeshiva, and he spent about an hour trying to explain how when Abraham tells Sarah, when the three guests come, it says he tells Sarah to go bring a young sheep from the flock, and then he serves the visitors the sheep with butter. Okay, and so wow, it's in kosher, you're mixing milk and meat. So this quote unquote rabbi, I mean, he is a rabbi, so it's not quote unquote, this idiot who happens also to be a rabbi spent about an hour trying to explain to his students how this was not a regular cow or regular sheep. It was a sheep that Abraham looked into Sefer HaYitzirah, looked into the Kabbalistic, the early Kabbalistic works, or early shall we say mystical works, the so-called legendary mystical works of early Judaism, and looked into Sefer Yetzirah and found out how God created cows during the days of creation, or young lambs during the days of creation, and he cast magical spells to create his own sheep using those same techniques that God used to create sheep during the 7 days of creation, and therefore it wasn't real meat because it was a magically created sheep that was then served to these visitors along with the butter. So it was not mixing of milk and meat. It was because this was a magical sheep. It was not a real sheep from the flock. I mean, this idiot rabbi spent an hour explaining this nonsense. And that's what I mean by the fact that you can sit in yeshiva for an entire day, a rabbinical yeshiva, and not learn a single bit of Torah, because the rabbis, they do not teach Torah. I don't know what the hell they teach. I mean, I do. It's all kinds of nonsense. But whatever it is not Torah, and it is certainly not Tanakh. And I don't like to turn these sessions into rabbi bashing sessions, although it's easy to do so. But I will sum up by saying that the rabbis are the enemies of the people of Israel. They have forced their fake Torah, they have forced their Reform Judaism on the nation of Israel for over 2,000 years. They've destroyed the nation of Israel for 2,000 years by doing this, and they're destroying the nation of Israel to this very day by trying to force their Pharisaic / rabbinical / Talmudic, Hellenist and Babylonian and Zoroastrian inspired bizarre version of, or bizarre interpretations of Torah on the nation of Israel. And what this is doing is causing a backlash. The Chilonim, the non-religious, want nothing to do with this nonsense, and so they throw out the baby with the bathwater. They throw out Torah and Tanakh altogether. And so actually the Chilonim are a reaction to the Datim. The non-religious in Israel are a reaction to the rabbinical Jews. And that's, therefore, I've also been saying for many years, for decades, that the true Chilonim are the Datim, or the Datim, sorry, the Chilonim are the true Datim, and the Datim are the true Chilonim. And what I mean by that is that the non-religious in Israel, they are actually the ones who want a more true form of Torah. They do not, in their hearts, they've come back to the land of Israel, and in their hearts and in their souls, they know that rabbinical Judaism is some kind of bizarre distortion of original Torah, and they want nothing to do with it. So they react and they throw out the baby with the bathwater. But if they were presented a real form of Torah, I believe not all. The nation of Israel is a rebellious nation. We've worshipped idols from the earliest days. Sometimes in our history, many or most of us have been worshiping idols, but many of the Chilonim would accept true Torah. And the reason that they don't accept they are not religious at this point in time is because the only thing that's presented to them is this bizarre rabbinical / Pharisaic / Talmudic Judaism. And on the other hand, the Datiim are the true Chilonim, because they think they're so religious, they think they're following Torah, but they're not following Torah. They're following some bizarre offshoot religion of Torah, just like Islam is an offshoot religion of Torah, and just like Christianity is an offshoot religion of Torah. And a good friend of mine always likes to say His quote, his proverb, his quip is that Christianity, or Jesus is to Christianity as Muhammad is to Islam, as the rabbis or as the Talmud is to rabbinical Judaism. So we need to return to the true Torah. The time is now, because there's not much time left. Israel is sinking deeper and deeper into a hole. Even if the current secular state of Israel is temporarily defeats Hamas, all they're doing is putting a band-aid on the situation, because the whole world, all of the surrounding nations have seen now the weakness of Israel, and Israel is weak because they have rejected, as they've been doing since ancient times, they've rejected their true God, Yahweh. They've rejected the Torah of Yahweh. They've rejected the ways of Yahweh, and they've chosen their two false philosophies, as I say almost every week. They've chosen the false philosophy represented by the God of Tel Aviv, which is the West and the United States of America, and represented by the quote-unquote God of Jerusalem, which is currently the Pharisees, rabbis / Talmud. Both of these false gods are fighting against each other, while at the same time, Israel is sinking deeper and deeper into a hole as these two fake philosophies fight each other, and as very few people return to the true Torah. And I was listened sometimes to, well, the last rabbi that I had before I became a Karaite, and actually he gave me the push to be a Karaite, and he'll never thank himself for it. But I don't really think he cares, to tell you the honest truth. But this guy's name is David Bar Chaim, okay? And I just want to show you this fool, this absolute fool. I mean, he's a smart guy and all, and he can quote things, but there are smart Christians, there are smart Muslims, there are smart secular people, okay? But look at this idiot, okay? I just want to show you what we're dealing with here. I can put him up on the screen in 1 second, okay? This guy thinks he's such a wise man, but he looks like a fool. He doesn't even realize what a fool he looks like, okay? Look at this. Let me see if I can find him, okay? The guy wears his amulets, oh, shoot. Let's go back. Where do we go? 1 second here. Oh, Jesus. I can't find it now. Let's keep on going to the next one. Pressing the wrong thing. Hold on a second. There we go. Let me put it up on the screen. Okay, look at this fool. He presents himself as a wise man, but anyone who has any common sense would see an absolute fool. I mean, look at this idiot. He wears these stupid Babylonian Zoroastrian amulets. In ancient times and in modern times, people would wear amulets to their false gods. They would attach them to their heads. They would attach them to their bodies. They'd make tattoos for them. They do all kinds of things to worship their false gods. Okay, and there is absolutely no place in the Tanakh, no place in the Torah that sanctions this crazy idea of tefillin, but the rabbis adopted it from the surrounding pagan nations, and this idiot refuses to give up his Pharisaic Reform Judaism, thinks of himself as a great wise man and perhaps as a future leader of the nation of Israel. And if you look at this idiot, anyone who has any common sense, anyone who has studied true Torah, who studied true Tanakh, looks at this idiot, this person, and doesn't see a wise man, sees an absolute fool. The guy looks like a clown with those ridiculous amulets on his head. Okay, enough. I don't want to sink into rabbi bashing. I don't want to sink into negativity. I really want to try to keep it positive. It's so much fun to bash our enemies, okay? But let's keep it positive, all right? And what I want to say is that the nation of Israel is getting to the point where it will have no choice whatsoever. No choice whatsoever. Its back will be against the wall, just like in recent Parsha, where the Israelites' back was against the wall. They were forced up against the Red Sea, and they saw the Egyptian army coming towards them. And then God says to Moshe, what are you sitting around for? Lift out, extend your staff, and cross the Red Sea, right? Something had to happen. Something great had to happen. Well, Israel is now having its back forced against the wall with everything that's happening in the Middle East right now. And it will have no choice. It is a do or die situation. It's like when Israel was forced up against the Red Sea. it is either going to have to make some fundamental changes in what it does and the way it does it, meaning come back to true Torah, come back to true Tanakh, or it will be the end of Israel. That's it. I don't know if that's a positive thing, but it is a positive thing because it will be a happy day when the nation of Israel finally rejects these two false philosophies of West/America worship and Pharisee/Rabbi/Talmud worship. Okay, that's it. That's the end of my dialogue for the day. And let's get going with some Torah here. All right, let's see what we got here. So we got to bring up our Tanakh. We got to share. I'll bring up the other ones as needed. And there we go. I think we're good to go. So we're in Parshat Yitro, Jethro, who has three names. Anybody know his three names? Jethro, Yitro, Hobab, and Reuel. We see him called by three different names. All right, let's see here. So we are supposed to start in Exodus 18. We missed all of Exodus because I was sick. You can hear maybe that I have a little bit of a residual, residual cough, a little bit of a residual stuffiness. But I'm basically back to normal. It was very, very unpleasant for about 3 weeks. I mean, I couldn't sleep for many nights because it was so unpleasant. I was coughing all night long, and it was just horrible. And I have no idea what I had. I didn't go to any doctors. I didn't take any medications. I usually don't go to doctors. I don't take any medications. I don't know if it's COVID, if COVID even exists. I don't know if it was some kind of flu. I have no idea. I don't care. I know that when I get sick, unless it's something very serious, what I need to do is eat healthy. I usually go mostly vegan. I drink a lot of fluids, have a lot of tea, a lot of fresh ginger, fresh garlic, stuff like that. And I just let the body do its thing. And that's what I did. So feeling much better now, not 100% back to normal, but definitely 90, maybe even 95% back to normal. Okay, so that being said, let us dig in. We're going to Exodus 18. Okay. Let's go over to the Hebrew. Alrighty. And just 1 second, please. Okay, Exodus 18. Let's get a little context here. So with the issue of the water, let's go back to, I'm not going to read. I'm going to start in Exodus 18. But this is right after the Israelites crossed the Red Sea. And then we have what's called Shirat Hayam, the Song of the Sea, as they call it. After that, we have issues with water at Marah, manna. The Israelites, of course, complain about the manna, the man. We have the issue with the quail, the Shabbat. Do not gather the manna on Shabbat. Then we have another issue with water at Rephidim. And Moshe elicits water from the rock, but he's punished for the way he did it. And God gets upset with Israel. And let's start here, actually. Okay. Let me bring up the list of journeys, which I am always attempting to perfect and check. Just give me a second here. So let's see here. Have our Israelite journeys. Whoa. 1 second, please. Okay, so we are here, Refidim. Okay, and let's pick it up here. Excuse me. So, وَيَسْأُ كل عادات بني إسرائيل مدبر سين لمسعيهم על פי יהוה ויחנו ברפידים ואין מים לשתות העם. So they get to this place from Midbar Sin, from the Sin desert, the desert of Sin. They're in the 15th day of the second month. So basically, a month after they exited Egypt, and they arrive in Refidim. Where is it? Who knows? We'll look it up another time. Wa Yarev Ha'am im Moshe. So the nation fought or argued with Moshe. Wayamru Tnu lanu mayim wanishteh. Give us water so that we can drink. Wayomer, excuse me, lahem Moshe. Ma tirivun mi madi. Ma tinosun et Yahweh. Why are you arguing with me? Why are you testing Yahweh? I mean, who am I? That's Moshe's answer all the time. I'm just God's messenger, right? You're arguing with me. Who am I? You know what you're really doing here is testing Yahweh. Okay, you're arguing with Yahweh. You're challenging Yahweh. Well, he's going to get pissed off. I mean, God's going to get pissed off this time. He's given him a number of breaks, but this time he's had enough. Verse 3. Why Yirsa? I'm sorry. Why is Ma? Shama Am Lemayim. So that the people thirsted for water. Why Yalena Am Al Moshe? And they complained to Moshe. Complainers, that's what they do all day long. You've met these type of people that just like to complain all day long. Hey, you want water? Go find water. What do you want from me? Vayomer lama zeh elitanu mimisrayim lehamith oti wa'et banai wa'et yiknai bet soma. So what did they say to him? They're being nasty. They're just being, what's the word? I don't know. I can't even think of the right word, but they're, instead of taking responsibility for their own situation, they're just, they're being like little babies trying to, blame Moshe for everything that goes wrong in their lives, trying to project their own problems onto Moshe. Why did you take us up out of Egypt? Notice whenever they go up out of Egypt, it's up. Whenever they go down to Egypt, it's down. There could be, as I mentioned many times, a geographical reason behind that. Egypt is lowlands. Israel, at least the heartland of Israel, is hilly, mountainous. And it could mean they're going from south to north. Or it just could mean it's the word spiritual, but when you go from a lower place of existence to a higher place of existence, you're going down to up, right? Okay, so why did you bring us up out of Egypt? To kill me and my children and my livestock with thirst, with lack of water. Unbelievable. It's like these people are just completely ungrateful. They're like little children. Why is Moshe el Yahweh? So Moses goes and cries out to Yahweh, cries to Yahweh. What am I going to do with these people? just a bit more. If something doesn't happen soon, literally a little bit more, and they're going to stone me to death. They're going to stone me. So they are taking it all their problems out on Moshe. Moshe has done everything for them. Moshe has been their leader. He took them out of Egypt. He saved them from the house of slaves. Beit Avadim, usually translated as the house of bondage, but it really means the house of slaves, a slave pit. And now, like little children, no thanks, no gratitude, no respect. They just complain like little children to the same person who's helped them out. Shabbat Shalom, Yoshi Ben. Vayomer Yahweh el Moshe, and Yahweh said to Moses, Avor lifnei ha'am, v'kach itcha mizaknei Yisrael. So go throughout the people, or literally pass before the people, and take with you from among the elders of Israel. Matha asher ikita bo et ha'yaor kach biadcha v'halachta. So grab the elders of Israel, take the same staff that you used to stretch out to strike the Nile. That was the first plague, right? Plague of blood, and go. So Moshe takes the elders, takes his magical staff. Verse 6, Hineni omed lifanecha sham al sur v'horev ve'ikita basur v'yasu mimenu mayim v'shata ha'am v'yas ken Moshe le'einei ziknei Yisrael. So I'll just paraphrase here, word for word. Hineni omed lefanecha sham. I'm sorry. Hineni omed lefanecha sham. I will stand before you there by the rock. At Horev is Mount Sinai, another word for Mount Sinai. There are three words for Mount Sinai: Horev, Har Sinai, or Sinai, and Har HaElohim. Just as there are three names for Yitro, for Jethro, Hovav, Reuel. So we see multiple names for things often in the Tanakh. I won't say often, but sometimes. Then you'll strike the rock, and water will come out of it. And the people will drink. And Moses did so right before the eyes of the elders of Israel. In other words, the elders of Israel are standing there. Okay, they're the witnesses to what's going on. Maybe the rest of the nation is gathered around, but the elders of Israel are to see this. They were picked out, and they were to see this. Now, I know one quote-unquote rabbi who claims that the elders of Israel are the Sanhedrin. That's a bunch of baloney. The elders of Israel, they do form a kind of, let's say, council or a group of people who assist Moshe, but they certainly don't have a situation where they overrule Moshe, as the Sanhedrin has the ability to, I guess, make whatever decisions it wants. I know some people who want to reinstate the Sanhedrin. Good luck with that one. I think the nation will rebel outright before ever allowing a Talmudic / Pharisaic / rabbinic Sanhedrin to be reestablished. But when people do tell me they want to establish a Sanhedrin, I say, great. Do you realize that at least in the earlier days of the Sanhedrin, more than half of the Sanhedrin was Sadducees, was quote unquote Karaites or Karaite, predecessors, not the direct predecessors, but those who rejected the quote unquote oral law of the rabbis. Great. Establish the Sanhedrin, and we'll make 60% of them Karaites. Verse 7. Of course, they don't mean that. They want a Pharisaic Sanhedrin. They don't want to reestablish Sanhedrin. They want to reestablish Pharisaic Talmudic rule over the nation of Israel. As a good friend of mine likes to call these types of people, which sadly are the Rav Kahana types, the Itamar Ben Gvir types, and the mentions Rabbi Bar Chaim type, and all of this ilk. And I don't say ilk because I was a Kahanist for many years, and of course I agree with many of the things he says, but I certainly don't want the reestablishment of Pharisaic / rabbinical / Talmudic Judaism, and neither does the rest of the nation. And they will outright rebel. I mean, like violently revolt before they will ever allow such a thing to happen. And that's exactly what the Chilonim represent. Chilonim do not represent anti-Torah and anti-Tanakh. They represent anti-Rabbi, Pharisee, Talmud. That's what they represent. If you want to understand what's going on in the nation of Israel, understand that. And suddenly all of Israeli politics will make a lot more sense. Okay, verse 7. Vayikra Hashem hamakom nasa miriva ariv bnei Israel wa'al nasatam et Yahweh lemor hayesh Yahweh b'kirbenu im ayin. So he called, this is Moshe, called the name of the place Masau Meribah, testing and argument, testing and conflict. I don't know exactly translate it, something like that. Because of the conflict, the argument that the children of Israel, the arguments of the children of Israel, and because of their testing of Yahweh, saying, Hayesh Yahweh b'kirbenu im ayin. Saying, is Yahweh in our midst or not? So this is the name of this place, Refidim, now renamed Masa Meribah. If I don't have that here, I should really add it. Yeah, I did add it. Okay, so that's it. So God is pissed off. Why yavo Amalek? Why yalhem im Israel ve'Refidim? So here comes Amalek. So Amalek is going to have problems with, or Israel is going to have problems with Amalek a number of times in the wandering stage, in the 40 years of wandering, or beginning anyway. This is one time. Another time is going to be when Amalek actually comes out and attacks Israel. Well, we can do it now as well. But also later on in the book of Numbers, when we have the spies or the scouts that go out to search out, to scout the land of Israel and come back with a bad report. Then they decide to go up. Well, we'll get to it when we get to it. But Amalekites come out and attack them when they try to invade Israel after rejecting Yahweh. Verse 9, right? Yomer Moshe el Yehoshua har lanu enoshim waseh hilhem Amalek. So now Moshe says to his assistant, Yoshua, this is the first person ever in the Tanakh to be renamed. So his name is Hoshea, but now he's renamed with the name of God, with the name of Yahweh. And he's the first person to have this done. Okay, so some will claim that Yehuda has the name of Yahweh. That is incorrect. Some will claim that Avram, when he's renamed Avraham, he gets the Hey from the name of Yahweh. Sarai becomes Sarah. She gets the Hey from the name of Yahweh. That may be the case. But if that's the case, it's not explicit because those are namings by God. Okay? But here, this is clearly, right? This is Moshe renames Hoshea as Yehoshua. So Moshe already knows the name of Yahweh, Yud Hey Waw Hey. And this is the first time that that name is incorporated into someone's name. The name of Yahweh is incorporated into the name of a person by another person. And now, from now on, we have many people where throughout the Tanakh where the name of Yahweh is incorporated into their names, like Yahu, Yeshayahu. I mean, endless amounts of people. Okay, so the point here that this is again a proof that the name was not known before these times. Okay, Hoshea was only renamed by Moshe after they're out in the desert. Okay, the name was revealed to Moshe not long before this. Right, we're now in we said the second month, 15th day of the second month. So it's maybe only a couple of months since Moshe came and started speaking to Pharaoh. We don't know exactly the time frame because day and month and day are never listed for the plagues. But it hasn't been very long since Moshe started the whole met Pharaoh. And therefore, it hasn't been very long since Moshe found out the true name of God, which is Yahweh. And of course, that happened at the incident of the burning bush in Exodus chapter 3. But now that name, Yahweh, is already being incorporated. Okay, so why is it not Yahshua or something like that? Why Yehoshua? Doesn't this prove that the name is Yehovah rather than Yahweh? Well, for that, I would point to a series that I've mentioned many times by, unfortunately, the Messianics. But as I've mentioned many times, they barely bring this up. He does bring up the J guy a little bit here and there, but he doesn't really rely on the J guy to make his points. He really relies on Hebrew grammar, the Masoretic texts, etc. It's an excellent, the channel is called Hebrew Gospels. No, it would be on YouTube. Anyway, if you look it up, he has a 15-part series explaining why the name is Yahweh and not Yehovah. And his explanations are so convincing that for a number of years now, at least a year, maybe 2 years, I've now switched over to saying the name is Yahweh. So how can Yahweh become Yeho? Well, I can't go through the whole thing right now. It's very long. It's very complicated. There's a lot of evidence in the Masoretic texts. But we can look at, I could just give you one little hint, which is we could see that the word Yishtahaweh, which means why Yishtahaweh, he bowed down, is shortened to why Yishtahu. So Yishtahaweh is shortened to Yishtahu. Yishtahaweh is shortened to why Yishtahu. So Yahweh can be shortened to Yahu. That's it. That's a very simple explanation. It's a lot more to it. But if you watch the 15-part series of this, sadly, he's a Messianic, then he goes into great detail. And I think his arguments are very convincing. Could he be wrong? Sure, could be wrong. But I think the evidence that he brings is so clear. Also, there is another Karaite Hakham, Yaakov ben Yisrael, who I didn't have a falling out with him. He had a falling out with me for some strange reason, but I still have great respect for the man, his level of scholarship, his knowledge of the Hebrew language. And I don't think he comes to the conclusion that it's Yahweh, but he comes to a similar conclusion. I think he thinks it's Yahweh or something like this. But he uses similar reasoning that this person, this Hebrew Gospels person, uses. Okay. To make a long story short, to get back to what we were saying, so Yehoshua, Hoshea becomes Yehoshua. The name Yahweh is incorporated into the name Yehoshua, showing that this is now that the name has been revealed to Moshe not long ago, that this name, the name of God, the true name of God, the only name of God, the only true name of God, you can have a lot of nicknames. Okay, my English name is Michael, but people can call me Mike, Mikey, all kinds of stuff. But on my birth certificate is Michael. My Hebrew name is Melech. Which, by the way, I do like to point out, I did not give that name to myself. That's the name I was given at my Brit Milah. I was named after my great-grandmother Malka. And the reason I call myself Melech ben Yaakov is because Melech is the name I was given at my bris, my circumcision when I was 8 days old. And my father's Hebrew name is Yaakov. So Melech ben Yaakov. Okay. ויאמר משה אל יהושע, בחר לנו אנשים וצא אליכם בעמלק. So let's go out and fight Amalek. מחר אנוכי ניצב על ראש הגבעה, מטה האלוהים בידי. So we have this magical staff. Now I have a theory, right? We see sometimes Aaron reaches out his staff. And later on, we even see that Aaron's staff, when we have the whole incident in the book of Numbers with Korach. This is a working theory. It's just popped into my mind a couple of days ago. That there's only one staff. This is really only Moshe's staff. It's the same staff that he was carrying when God met him at the burning bush. And whenever it says Aaron stretched out his staff, it's really Aaron taking Moshe's staff, because Aaron is now Aaron is basically Moshe's Navi, and Moshe was to be like the Elohim, like to be God in the eyes of Pharaoh. So I have this working theory. I could be totally wrong, but I have this working theory which I'm working on, and these working theories always play themselves out to be either right or wrong. But I have this working theory that there's only one staff, and this is that staff that it was Moshe's shepherding staff that he happened to be carrying on the day that God met him at the burning bush. But I could be wrong. Just something to keep in mind, and it will play itself out. Okay, at any rate, this clearly is that staff, because it says Matei HaElohim, the staff of God. Okay, and it's Moshe. It's being told to do it. So clearly that's that magical staff, the God-imbued staff that Moshe was told at the burning bush to throw down on the ground. It would become a snake, etc. You know the thing, man. Verse 10, ויעש יהושע כאשר אמר לו משה להילחם בעמלק, ומשה אהרון וחור עלו ראש הגבעה. So Yoshua is tasked with the job of raising an army. Yoshua does it. And then Moses, Aaron, and Hur. So Yoshua's out fighting. And then we have Moses, Aaron, and Hur. They are going up on the hilltop to watch the action. So we all know who Aaron is. Aaron is Moshe's bigger brother, 3 years older. I'm 3 years older than my brother. Who's Hur? Well, Hur we do meet again a number of times. And let's see where. So Exodus 31:2. I'll just read the English to see. I've called by name Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. This is the main craftsman this is the head craftsman, the producer, shall we say, of the tabernacle. Okay, the main artisan, the chief artisan of the tabernacle. Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. Okay, is this the same Hur? I believe so. There would be no reason not to believe it is. So this is Bezalel's grandfather. Verse 11. והיה כאשר ירים משה ידו וגבר ישראל, וכאשר יניח ידו וגבר עמלק. So when Moshe would lift up his hand, Israel prevailed, and when he let his hand down, his arm down, Amalek would prevail. So Moshe is doing his part. I mean, he's an old guy. He's 80 years old, right? So he's doing what he can do for an 80-year-old. Although he'll live another 40 years. And I always like to point out that Moshe, 2/3 of his life, he was not the Moshe that we know. I mean, he was the proto-Moshe, right? He killed the Egyptian, buried his body in the sand, ran away to Midian, got married to the daughter of a Midianite priest, had 2 children, etc. But his true mission in life did not start until he was 80 years old, and he lived for exactly 120 years old. So literally the last third of his life is when Moshe fulfilled his mission. Okay? So if you live to 90 years old and you're like Moshe, then you won't really start fulfilling your mission until you're 60 years old. I don't know how many of you are fans of I grew up when David Letterman was the hottest thing on television, at least I was a high school / college kid back then. And I don't mean the later Letterman show, the early Letterman show, Late Night with David Letterman on NBC. The later show, the one on CBS, I don't remember what it's called. The Late Show with David Letterman was absolutely different and horrible. But that early show was so cutting edge. It was so edgy. Everyone, all of us high school / college kids watched it. And so there was one figure on there, everyone's favorite figure, probably even more than David Letterman himself, was Larry Bud Melman. And so Larry Bud Melman, for those of you who know him, was an older guy who basically did nothing. He did no acting, or I think he did maybe like little bit parts his entire life on stage. And then when he was 60 years old or so, he was discovered by David Letterman and became a huge star. And I think he died in around 2015, so probably also at the age of 85, 90, something like this. But so one time David Larry Bud Melman said it, but he's just reading the cue cards. He said something like, well, do what I did. Do nothing for the first 60 years of your life, and then get discovered by a television show and become a big star. So I guess Moshe is like Larry Bud Melman. But Moshe did not achieve his true mission in life until the last third of his life. 2/3, the first 2/3 of his life were all preparation. He was in exile. He's away from his people. He's away from his birthplace, away from his mother, away from his brother, away from his sister, right? Who knows the pain and suffering and torture that he had to go through for those many years. Yes, he got married, he had kids, but still, he was far away from his family, and that's not easy. Just like Joseph was far away from his family for many years. Okay. Verse 12. With Moshe, Bedim, ויקחו אבן, וישימו תחתיו, וישב עליה, ואהרון וחור תמכו בידו, מזה אחד ומזה אחד, ויהי ידו אמונה עד בו השמש. So Moshe's hands became weighed down, became heavy. So they took, his two assistants, Aaron, his brother, and Hur. They took a stone and put it underneath him, and he sat upon it. And then Aaron and Hur, they supported his hands, one from one side, one from another side, one hand and one the other hand, and his hands remained faithful, or his hands remained steady until the sun came down, until the sun set. So they were able to keep that rock up. I'm sorry, they were able to keep that hand up so that Israel would prevail against Amalek. Verse 13. Wa'lish, I'm sorry. Wa'losh Yeshua et Amalek wa'et Amo lefi Harev. And Yeshua weakened. Halash means weak. It translates defeated, but similar idea, or same general idea. Amalek and his people by the sword. So Amalek and his people, what does that mean? I guess there was an actual person named Amalek that was still alive at this point. Well, let's just see for a second. So Amalek is first mentioned in Genesis 36:12. So as one of Esau's sons. So is it possible that one of Esau's sons is still alive? I don't think so. This is hundreds of years later. Let's go back. So I don't know. I have to admit, I have no idea what that means. If Amalek Amo, is there a descendant, a direct descendant of that son of Esau, now named Amalek, who's the king of Amalek? But I don't know. We could look up some commentary. Let's go to one of my favorite commentators, as I always like to say, the worst commentator ever. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome, Suriel. Yes, I'm back. Thank God. It was very unpleasant flu or COVID. I have no idea what the hell I had, but who cares? And I am back, almost back to normal. So let's look at Ibn Ezra and see what he has to say. You could also look at our old friend Robert Alter. Usually has some good insights. Let's see here. All right, Ibn Ezra, we've got to go to Sefaria. Ibn Ezra is great. He is a great commentator. I don't agree with everything he says, but he's an excellent, excellent commentator. Rashi who is basically, the rabbis hilariously say if you want the pshat, if you want the simple meaning of the Torah, look at Rashi's commentary. It's insanity. Rashi's commentary is not pshat. It's mostly midrash. It's mostly non-straightforward commentary. It's all kinds of legends mixed in and all kinds of bizarre interpretations. But Ibn Ezra really is pshat commentary, and he's an excellent, excellent commentator. He interacted with a number of Karaites that were contemporary with him, most notably Yefet ben Eli. They quote each other a bunch of times. But let's go to Ibn Ezra. We can go to Rashi for fun, see what this moron says. Let's do it. If he says anything. You know, they don't comment on every single verse, but let's see if we can get a Rashi on it, and hopefully he'll say something so stupid that we'll see exactly how retarded he is. Okay, so we're in Exodus 17:13. Exodus 17:13. Oops. $17:13. Nope, it doesn't say anything about it. So here's a typical ridiculous commentary. So it says, Yachlish Yeshua, that Yeshua weakened Amalek. I'll just read the English to save us the trouble. He cut off the heads of his mighty men. Doesn't say that anywhere in the Torah. So this is not pshat. This is just some legend which arises God knows where. And left only the weak among them. Doesn't say that anywhere in the Tanakh. And did not kill all of them. Okay, well, it says doesn't say he destroyed Amalek, and we know that Amalek later torments Israel, as we mentioned in Book of Numbers with the incident of the spies. So that's true. He didn't kill all of them, but it doesn't say anything about this. So Rashi's making this up or getting it from some God knows where. Leaving the weak men alive, thus Amalek was made weak and powerless for further mischief. Okay, well, they were not powerless for further mischief because they did plague Israel later. But see, he's taking, this is what the rabbis do. He's taking this word Yachlesh literally, too literally, and building legends on the fact that it says, the Torah says he didn't destroy Amalek, but weakened Amalek, and coming up with all these things that are not in the text, but he reads, he takes legends from who knows where it comes from, some Midrash, the Talmud, from the Mishnah, who the heck knows. From this, we may learn that they acted according to the express pronouncement of the Shekhinah. Otherwise, they would not, in the stress of battle, not have so discriminated. So in other words, what Rashi's saying is that clearly Joshua is following the orders of God, because they would have just killed off all of Amalek. But since it says they only weakened Amalek, it must be that God told them not to kill off Amalek completely, but just to weaken them. Because if it were left to their own devices, they would have killed off all of Amalek. And then we have a reference here to Midrashic material. We flip the Rabbi Ishmael 17:13-12. So Rashi is quoting apparently that Midrash, and this is about as far from Pshat interpretation as you can possibly get. This is all Midrash, all making up stories and legends, or re-quoting stories and legends that are nowhere in the text, but that the rabbis will claim was passed down from generation back from the time of Moshe, and therefore is the truth. Okay, this is insanity. This is exactly an example of why Rashi is the worst Torah commentator. He's not a Pshat commentator, and he's an absolutely horrible commentator on the Torah. Now let's contrast this with an actual great commentator, which is Ibn Ezra. Let's see if he has something to say about the same verse. So we're in 17:13. So when you think of Rashi, think of the word rash. Back in the day when I used to use Microsoft Word, I don't use it anymore. When I used to have to use it, whenever I'd write the word Rashi, it would autocorrect to rash. So I always call him Rash, and that's what he is. Rashi is a rash on the bottom of the people of Israel. Okay. So now let's go to a great commentator. So Ibn Ezra often gives grammatical explanations. So enefresh ben yachlosh ben yachlesh. There's no difference between yachlosh and yachlesh. So what does it say in Tanakh? Masoretic text. It says, where are we? Yachlosh. Right? So halash, yachlosh. Without getting into great detail, yachlosh means he will weaken. There's a vav before it, so it's called the conversive vav or the vav hipuch. So he weakened. So Ibn Ezra says there's no difference between yachlosh and yachlesh. Just like the word yitrof. So he gives another example of where you wouldn't have a difference between yatrof and yatref. And here we're filled in. So that's Psalm 7:3 to Genesis 49:27. It's a bit technical. It'll take too long to get into it. But basically, he's trying to prove that even though it says yachlosh, or I guess what he's saying is that since the consonants, I mean, here in this version, it does seem to have, it does seem to say yachlosh, but he's saying it doesn't matter whether it says Yachlosh or Yachlesh, it's the same thing. And he brings other examples. This is an excellent commentary. It's an excellent comment. Kitador Nadar. He's giving another example. Oidor Yaakov Bepetach. So he's giving a bunch of examples of how the Yachlosh, Yachlesh, Yitrof, Yatref, Tidor, Nadar, they're all the same. Oidor Yaakov Bepetach. Rak Zot, Gzera Kimalat Shov, Shav. Let's see. Okay. Kimelat Shav. Rakzot Gzera Kimelat Shav. So, but it's the same rule as the word Shav. Shov Shav. In other words, it's technical, it's grammatical. I don't want to get too deep into it. But what he's saying is that there's no difference if you have a ov, an o sound, or just an a sound. Shav, pam yotzet, upam omedet. So yotzet is transitive, pam omedet is intransitive. So it could be either intransitive or transitive, depending on the context. O ie ugavar yamut biyachlash ukvar halash. And then he goes on. I'm not going to get too deep, but this is an excellent grammatical commentary on what's going on in that verse. Okay, and it would just take too long to go through all the details, but we get the general idea. So we see the difference between a Rashi commentary, a Rashi comment, which is a bunch of nonsense and is not pshat. Now the rabbis, they're so brainwashed, or rabbinical Jews are so brainwashed that they think that any nonsense that the Talmud, the Midrash, the later commentators such as Rashi say, they think it's pshat. If Rashi were to say that Moshe put underpants on his head and danced around, danced around the doing the mambo, then they would believe it and they would say it's pshat. It's like a self-referential. It's like a circular definition. Anything these people say is by definition pshat. So they say that Rashi is giving the pshat of the Torah because anything he says is by circular definition pshat. This is not pshat. This is nonsense. This is utter nonsense. Ibn Ezra is pshat, and he's a great commentator. Okay. Shabbat Shalom. Here's Whitey Boy. Shabbat Shalom, Phil. I played the Lefty anthem for you, but you weren't here. Maybe I'll do it again later. Okay. Let's close this out. So we see the difference here between a real pshat commentator, an excellent commentator, such as the Ibn Ezra, and there are others as well, but I like to focus on the Ibn Ezra, and a horrible commentator, a rash upon the buttocks of Israel, known as Rashi, whose commentary is the opposite of pshat. It's midrashic, but brainwashed rabbinites will say it's pshat interpretation. Pshat means the straightforward, we Karaites strive for. It's just so ridiculous. Okay. Anywho, it didn't answer our original question, which is, what does it mean, Amalek and his people? Who is so? There's a guy named Amalek, right? We saw Amalek was one of the sons of Esau, but it couldn't be the same guy because this is hundreds of years later. So I don't know. We'll just move on. Question. A lot of questions. Not always answers. Sometimes we just have questions. That's life. That's being honest. Anyone who comes along and pretends they have all the answers in the Torah, run from them, man. Run for the hills. Run for the hills. Verse 14, Wayomer Yahweh el Moshe. So Yahweh said to Moshe, Tov zot zikaron, sefer wasim ba'oznei Yoshua. So write this on a scroll. I wish we had the scroll. maybe it's incorporated into the text of the 5 books of Moses. Wasimba Azne Yeshua, and place it in the ears of Yeshua. In other words, tell it, Yeshua, ki mocho and et zecher Molech mitachat shemayim, that I will certainly erase the memory of Amalek from under the heavens, meaning that nation will be destroyed. Moshe built an altar. It's before the tabernacle was built. So he built an altar and called it, and we saw this in Genesis a lot of times, that altars were built and the names, sometimes the altar was given a name, sometimes the place was given a name, but the name of the altar was Yahweh Nisi. God has tested me, or God is my test. I'm sorry, God is my banner. Verse 16, why Yomer ki yad al kisyah milchama Yahweh b'Amalek. And he said, as my hand is upon the throne of God, the throne of Yah. So here we have Yah. So if it's Yehovah, why isn't it Yah or something like that? No, it's Yah, which again fortifies this idea that the true full name is Yahweh. Milchama Yahweh Amalek. That Yahweh is at war with Amalek, midor dor, from generation to generation. So we will see the Amalekites again. We know that Shaul, Saul, the first king of Israel, he was already on his way to being dethroned, but the last action that made Yahweh finally tell him that his dynasty, after one generation, is ended, is when he refuses, or when he has mercy on Agag, the Amalekites. And so that would have been perhaps the end of Amalek, but Saul violated this by having mercy on Agag and was deposed. And David, at that point, had already been in the wings waiting to take over, but that was the end of Shaul. Shabbat Shalom, move in, Scary. Okay, so that's the end of Exodus 17. Now we get to this week's Parsha, Exodus 18. Any comments? Any questions regarding Exodus 17? Before we move on. Okay. Alrighty. Let me take a break for 2 minutes. We'll put up Phil's song since he missed it the first time. And we will continue in about 5 minutes. I'll just do one song. 1 second. Here you go, Phil.
בימים ערומים של פרעות והנים בלילות השמונים של ינון. בערים בכפרים את דגלנו נרים ועלה
Okay, we're back. Let's get rid of this. Okay, so welcome back to the Torah study. This is Hakham Melech Ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im. Welcome, Eden Lerange. I have no idea who you are. I have so many friends who use aliases. Is this EF? EF Hutton? I don't know, but whoever you are, I think you are EF, because your initials, from Cuba. And no, I didn't just start. We started about an hour and a half ago, but that's okay. Yes, I'm better. Thank you. Almost 100% back to normal. All right, so we finished Exodus 17. We're up to Exodus 18. Let me close a couple of these windows here. Let me, no, it's me. It's DS. 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 The heck is DS? I don't know. DS. I don't know who that is. Oh, gotcha. Gotcha. Hey, DS. Got it. Welcome. Now I know who it is. All right. All right. I won't say your name. I don't know why you're hiding your real name, but okay, whatever. Okay, so present, share screen. So we just played. Yeah, you're getting chatters. Getting chatters. We just played. So that was the Lehi anthem. The Lehi is the Stern Gang. They were the most, I guess, radical of the Jewish gangs that politely asked the British to leave. If I were alive at that time, I definitely would have been a member of the Stern Gang, which probably means I wouldn't be alive for very long. But oh well. Avram Stern was shot after he was arrested by the British. He was shot. I think the British claimed in self-defense, but they just basically executed him extra judicially. Anywho, we see the difference between people like Avram Stern and the weak leadership of Israel today. Benjamin Netanyahu, what an absolute loser. I mean, this poor, you can always tell the reality. Okay, who is it who says? I can't remember who it is. Someone I've been listening to recently says the truth of a person always comes out in the end. They may hide it for a while. They may live under illusions for a while. We may live under the illusions that they are a certain way. But whether you're a good person or a bad person, whatever your true essence is will come out in the end. You can only judge a person by his end, not really by his beginning. We gave the example of Shaul Melech, King Saul. Yeah, the same goes for the Americans, Aiden Laudange, our great friends, the United States of America. Oh, they love us so much. Thank God we have such great friends and allies like the United States of America. What would we do without them? Anywho, you can always tell a person by his end, like King Saul, right? Sadly, who he really was, his real essence, as someone who didn't have enough faith in Yahweh to really follow in his heart. So he's replaced by someone whose heart was loyal to Yahweh, meaning David. So we see Benjamin Netanyahu, we see he was riding high for a while, man. When Trump was in, he was doing the Abraham Accords, he was going, everything looked golden, right? The Middle East was going to enter a new era of peace and prosperity. But we see where he and his flawed attitude, his flawed approach towards the world, his lack of faith in Yahweh, the Elohim of Israel, his faith in his false god known as the United States in the West, looked like a Westerner, acted like a Westerner. He thought he was so hot. He thought he was above it all because he knew how to, talk to the West. He's still trying to push this baloney that our war, Israel's war, is America's war. What a bunch of baloney. It's not true. But he needs to do that because he wants to goad his God, the United States of America, into defending their little brother, their 51st state, Israel. It's just so sickening. It's so sickening. But we see what a weak human being he is, what a flawed approach he's had. We see that all of his success over the past 20 years of his, it's just been all smoke and mirrors. It amounted to nothing. But it goes back further than just 20 years. It goes back, as someone who really does speak the truth, Moshe Feiglin says, the entire Oslo conception is flawed, and he's 100%. There are a couple of people out there who really do speak the truth. Moshe Feiglin, I know he's a rabbinite, but he is a person who really speaks the truth. I just love listening to what he has to say. But it's something that I've been saying for years, for decades, that it goes much deeper than just the Abraham Accords, than just the giving away Gaza and giving away parts of the West Bank. The whole peace with Egypt is fake. The whole peace with Jordan is fake. And probably even the peace with the United Arab Emirates. I mean, these Arabs, they're snake oil salesmen. They're just using Israel. The UAE is just using Israel. They're the Saudi Arabians, the UAE, they need Israel because they feel a threat from Iran. Iran is mostly Shiite. The UAE and Saudi Arabia, they're Sunni. So they're afraid of Iran. So they figure we might as well side with America and the West for protection against Iran. But so that's temporary. They're just using us. Jordan, this peace that's been around since, when did they make peace with Jordan? I don't know. I can't even remember. It's a fake peace. Even you see now that even Jordan and Egypt, they've both been threatening, not high level, I mean, not intense threats, but kind of subtle threats that it will jeopardize if Israel doesn't lay off on the poor old Gazans, then it will jeopardize the relations or the peace between Jordan and Egypt. There is no peace between Jordan/Egypt and Israel. There's no peace between Jordan and Israel. There's just a temporary ceasefire, and Arabs who are smart, sneaky snake oil salesmen who can sell you, a trinket worth about, 2 shekels for 1,000 shekels. They're just using Israel for a period of time. Same with Egypt. Egypt now has the largest army, the largest military in the Middle East, I think even larger than Israel's, with advanced weapons that they all got from the United States and the West, and no enemies. Who is Egypt's enemy? Libya? Tunisia? Sudan? Ethiopia? Who? No, all of that is ultimately going to be pointed at Israel. Same with whatever Jordan has. There's no peace. The whole thing is going to completely fall apart. It's just all been smoke and mirrors. So the problem is much deeper than we think it is. It's not just Gaza and Iran and Lebanon and Hezbollah. It's all of them. It's everyone. It's Yemen. Who the heck ever heard of these Houthis and the Houthis and the Tutsis and whoever thought Yemen would get involved in this? Yemen, I thought they just sat around on the floor in the dust eating malawach and schug. I mean, what the heck? So all of these weapons are eventually going to be turned on us. There has never been a day of peace with Egypt. There's just been a temporary ceasefire that Egypt, smart Arab snake oil salesmen that they are, sold to the naive Jews desperate for quiet and peace without actually doing what they need to do, which is return to the true Torah, the true Tanach, the true God of Israel, Yahweh. They thought they could just have a nice life without doing all of that stuff. No, it's all going to fall apart. And Netanyahu is going to be finished one way or another. I predict a very bad end for Netanyahu. He is responsible, not just for the deaths of the 1,200 people on October 7th. He is responsible. He and his ilk are responsible for the deaths of every Jew since Menachem Begin signed this fake peace treaty with Egypt in 1977 or whatever it is. Yep. Well, Israel doesn't need a lot of weapons. Remember, Gideon started with 30,000 troops. God said it's too much. And in the end, He attacked, was it the Midianites? I always forget my enemies of Israel, so many of them. But I think it was the Midianites. He attacked them with 300 troops, defeated them with 300 troops. So we don't need quantity. What we need is faith in Yahweh. What is the point of having Israel had the most sophisticated, AI security fence on the southern border, and a bunch of Arabs with motor scooters broke through it and killed 1,200 of our people. So we don't need quantity. We need to know how to use what we have. And that requires faith in Yahweh. That requires loyalty to Yahweh, because in return, Yahweh will give us the wisdom and grant us the victory, just as we saw just now in Exodus 17, where he granted the victory to Moshe and Yeshua against the Amalek. I have to charge, and I have to plug in my charger in a couple of minutes, but all right, let's move on to Exodus 18. This is really the beginning of our Parsha. This is the visit of Jethro. Makes a cameo. He hangs out for a while with the Jews and then disappears back off into the ether. So let's get going on 18. Israel is so screwed right now, but it's not screwed. It's learning its lessons. Its sins, its rebelliousness is coming back on its head. And it doesn't mean that everyone who was killed on October 7th, or even everyone who was killed in the Holocaust, was a bad, evil person, was a sinner. God forbid. I was just reading in Yecheskel and Ezekiel the other day. God, I should have written down the exact verse, but we try to remember it. Yeah, I am so full of wrath, paraphrasing, says Yahweh, that I will sweep away the righteous with the unrighteous. When Yahweh gets pissed off enough, he just sweeps everybody away. So just because when Israel sins, they cause the death of the innocent, of our own innocent brothers and sisters. Yahweh doesn't do it. He just reacts. But when he gets pissed off enough, he'll just sweep everyone away. There's a lot to say about that, right? That was the whole argument of Abraham with Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Are you going to sweep away the innocent with the guilty? Is that the way you should act? And in the end, he did. He destroyed Sodom. Well, there weren't even 10 righteous people. Yeah, Ezekiel, they're all great, man. But Ezekiel's is difficult to get through because it's very long. It kind of rambles a little bit, and I don't mean that in a negative way. It just has a lot to say, but there's a lot of depth in Yecheskel. He's an amazing. They're all amazing prophets. There's not one prophet who's not amazing. But Yecheskel's, I mean, you go through the book of Daniel, it's very terse. It kind of gets to the point. Yecheskel, you really have to listen to it or read it again and again and again and again and again. And even then, there's so many parts to it which are, don't stick in the mind. Anyway, all right, we're in Exodus chapter 18. I'm gonna have to plug in a second. So let's go. Alrighty. Verse 1, why Yishma, Yitro, Kohen Midian. So Yitro, the priest of Midian, so we know who this is. This is Moses' father-in-law. Hoten Moshe, it says right here, father-in-law of Moshe. Et kol asher asa Elohim leMoshe. So he heard about everything that God had done for Moses, Uli Israel, and for Israel, Amo, his people. Yotzi Yahweh et Israel mi Mitzrayim, that Yahweh had taken Israel out of Egypt. Verse 2. Vikach Yitro Hoten Moshe et Sipora Eshet Moshe Har Shilucheha. So Yitro, the father-in-law of Moshe brought Tzipora after Shilucheha, literally her sending away, meaning Moshe had sent her away. Now, I've heard some people say that Moshe divorced her because this word is used for divorce, but I don't think that's what it means. It just means he sent her. She couldn't come along with him. This is the first time he's seen her since he left for Egypt, right? He's not going to bring his wife and, well, wait a second. No, I take that back. Okay, I take that back. Moshe was coming back to Egypt. Zipporah was with him because we have the whole incident in, is it Exodus 4? Let's just look at this for a second. Right here. Exodus chapter 4. I'll just read in English to make it go quickly. So, so after the burning bush, Moses goes back to Jethro and says, "Let me return to my own people in Egypt to see if any of them are still alive." Jethro says, "Go, and I wish you well." So it's time for Moses to go back. So here it is, Exodus 4:20. Moses took his wife and sons and put them on a donkey and started back to Egypt. And he took the staff of God in his hand. Here we have again that staff of God. So that's the same, exactly the same word we saw, or phrase that we saw in the previous chapter where Moses took the staff of God. So skip ahead a little bit. So at a lodging place on the way, Yahweh met Moses and was about to kill him, but Zipporah's with him as he's going back to Egypt, took a flint knife, cut off her son's foreskin and touched Moses' feet with it. "Surely you are bridegroom of blood to me," she said, so the Lord let him alone. At the time, she said bridegroom of blood, referring to circumcision. So apparently Moses had not circumcised his son, and God was really mad about it. So Moses was away from his people, right? He had maybe forgotten that he was supposed to do it. But Zipporah took matters into her own hand. So at some point, we don't know when, I think this is the last time now Zipporah is mentioned until now, Exodus 18. So at some point, we don't know when, Moses sent Zipporah away, said, "Listen, go back home, okay? I got some dangerous stuff to do, okay? I gotta take care of some business. All right, take the kids, go back home, and I'll send for you when I'm ready." So that's what happened. So who knows how long they hadn't seen each other. We're now somewhere in the second month, approximately after a month after they exited Egypt. Who knows when Moshe was heading back to Egypt? Maybe a couple months before that, a year before that. So maybe Moshe hasn't seen Zipporah and his two sons in about a year or something like that. Okay. So Shiduchecha, with some people, including one Karaite, stupidly says this means he divorced her. It just meant he sent her away, like, go back home. When things calm down a little bit, I'll call for you. And that's what's going on. Okay. Verse 3. ואת שני בניה, ששם אחד גרשום, כמר גר הייתי בארץ נוכריה, שם אחד אליעזר, כי אלוהי אבי בעזרי, ויצילני מחרב פרעה. So her two sons, so the first one was named Gershom. Kemar ger hayiti be'eretz nochriya, because he said I was a, Gershom means I was a ger there, because I was a stranger in a strange land, a foreign land. And the name of the other one is Eliezer, which, by the way, is the name of Aaron's third son, same name. Because God is my father in that he helped me and saved me from the sword of Pharaoh. This is speaking about clearly when Moshe had run away because Pharaoh wanted to kill him. Okay, so those are the two sons of Moshe. So now, I got to plug in a second. So now Zipporah is coming with the two sons. And I think this is the first time his son Eliezer is ever mentioned. Gershom is mentioned before, right? Let's check. in Exodus 2. So this is before the burning bush. Gershom is mentioned. Eliezer's, I think this is the first time it's ever mentioned. In fact, I think it's the first time it's ever mentioned he has two sons. Here, yep. So that incident that occurred in Exodus chapter 4 with the throwing of the foreskin onto the floor by Tzipporah, it doesn't say which son this is being done about, right? Or being done in regards to. I gotta plug it in a second. Where was that? Right over here. Second. One second. So here it says he left Egypt with Zipporah and his two sons. I'm sorry, he left Midian for Egypt with Zipporah and his two sons. Okay. And here, she cuts off the foreskin of her son and basically throws it at his feet. So which son is this? I guess the second son, Eliezer? It's really hard to know. We really don't have too much of a reference for this. So we're just going to leave it for that. We'd have to look into it a little bit more. I'm not going to do it now. Okay. But here we have his wife showing up with his two sons. And we're up to verse 5. And I've got to plug in. So just give me a second. I'll just put it on mute and I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. So, why yavo Yitro choten Moshe uvanao, wa ishto el Moshe el ha-midbar asher hu hane sham har Elohim. So Yitro, Jethro, the wife and the two sons, come into the desert where Moses camped at the mountain of God. So they're already at the mountain of God. Again, I think we mentioned this here. Yeah. So wherever Refidim was, they've now moved over to the mountain of God. So this is it. They've now arrived at Mount Sinai. They're now at Mount Sinai, and we're about to get the Ten Commandments. Why Yomer el Moshe, Ani, Chotencha, Yitro, Ba Elecha, Oishtecha Ushne, Boneha, Ima. So Yitro, to make a long story short, announces his arrival. Verse 7, Why is Moshe ikrat hotno or ishtachu? Okay, so here we have the word ishtachu. The full word would be yishtachaweh. Just like Yahoo, the full name is Yahweh. Ishtachu, ishtachaweh. Okay, I mentioned that before. Again, you can check out this 15-part, very, very detailed and long series on why Yehovah is the incorrect pronunciation and Yahweh is the correct pronunciation. Very, very convincing series, so much so that I've now switched over to Yahweh for the past 2 years or so, although it's still not 100% conclusive. Okay. Waishaklo, Vish'alu ish le'ra'ehu l'shalom. So Moses kisses his father-in-law. Remember, he lived with him for many years in Midian. And they each asked, how are you doing? Hey, how you doing? Cool, I'm fine. How you doing? Good. And they came into the tent, into Moses' tent, obviously. Why Yisaper? So this is the first time Moses has seen his father-in-law since he left for Egypt, right? His father-in-law heard about it, everything that's going on, found out where Moses is, and came from Midian with his wife and 2 sons, and so they're catching up. Verse 8, Wayisaper Moshe lechotno et kol asher asa Yahweh leFaro. So Moses told his father-in-law everything that Yahweh had done to Pharaoh, uleMitzrayim, into Egypt, al odot Israel, for the sake of Israel, et kol hatir la'a asher matza'atam b'derech wa yatzilem Yahweh, and all of the say that, translate that, hardship. This word for a second, it's not a very common word. Four occurrences in the Tanakh. Okay, hardship. Okay. So all the hardship which Asher Mitzatam, which had found them, come upon them, but Derech whites wa Silem Yahweh, on the way, meaning on their exit from Egypt, meaning the whole thing with the Red Sea, and the Egyptians coming after them, and all of the complaints and other problems they've had, and how Yahweh had protected them or saved them. Verse 9, Ichad, Yitro, Akol, Tova, Asher Asa Yahweh Israel. And Jethro rejoiced, from the same root as the word chedva, which means joyfulness or rejoicing. Akol atova asher asa Yahweh Yisrael. So Jethro rejoiced or was happy about all of the good things which Yahweh had done for Israel. Asher itzilo miad Mitzrayim, in that he had saved him, meaning the people of Israel, from the hand of Egypt. Okay. Oh shoot, froze up again. Oh damn it. Okay, we're frozen. This happens once per session. I don't know why. I'm gonna get the beach ball now, and there's nothing I can do about it. I really can't stand this, but there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. All right, I'm just gonna sit here and twiddle my thumbs for 5 minutes until it decides to unfreeze. It's frozen. It's a pain in the neck, and it only happens when Streamyard is running. Ah, come on now. Well, I'll keep on reading, but I can't highlight the other stuff. We'll see what happens. Maybe it'll unfreeze, or I'll just have to force quit and come back in. Maybe I'll just force quit. Be right back. All right, I think we're back. Are we back? Okay. All righty, let's try this again. Reshare the screen. Okay. Exodus 18. Okay, so where were we? Okay, right over here. Verse 9. So we're in Exodus 18:9. So Jethro rejoices over all of this. ויאמר יתרו, Baruch Yahweh asher itzil etchem miad Mitzrayim. Blessed is Yahweh who saved you from the hand of Egypt, umiad Paro, and from the hand of Pharaoh. Asher itzil et ha'am mitachat yad Mitzrayim, who saved, or protected, saved the people from under the hand of Egypt. So Yahweh, who was, remember, he was a Kohen of Midian. Okay, he was a Kohen to some foreign god. He now says, "Blessed is Yahweh." It's like a convert, basically, or like a nirweh, because he's not a convert. And this is actually an excellent example of the difference between a nirweh and a convert, between a nirweh and a ger. So a ger is someone who decides to permanently become part of the nation. Moshe, as we'll see in the later part of this chapter, offers to Jethro. He says, "Stay, come live with us, be part of our people." And Jethro says, "No," and he goes back to Midian. So he's not a convert. He's not a ger. A ger is someone who comes. Ger means, as usually translated as sojourner, but it means someone who comes and permanently lives and becomes part of the nation of Israel. If Jethro had said, "Yes, I'm going to stay and live with you guys. I want to be with you guys," he would have been a ger. But he doesn't. He goes back to Midian. So he's a nilweh. He's a I don't want to use the word convert, but he is now a follower, clearly, of Yahweh. But he doesn't want to be part of the nation of Israel. He doesn't want to be part of the people of Israel. He wants his own life. He's a follower of Yahweh. He's a supporter of Israel. He's rejoicing in the great success of Israel, the great accomplishments of Israel, and being saved by Yahweh from Egypt. But he's doing this from the outside. So he's a nirweh, a supporter, or I think someone once translated it as an ally. Not a ger. He does not want to be a ger, and that's fine. And I think that's what most people should be and are. Most people who are not born on their father's side, and we really don't know who is and who is not actually a birthline Israelite. But for the best we can know, if someone has a Jewish father, we'll call them a birthline Israelite for now until everything becomes clear one day. And those who are not are not native-born Israelites. They're not Ezrachim, but they can become a ger if they say, "Okay, I want to be part of this nation. I'm going to come live with this nation." Who knows what that means today? Because even the people of Israel are scattered all over the world. But back in the day, it meant coming physically to live among the nation of Israel. That's what it meant. And those who don't, like Yitro, so they're not a ger. They're one more level out on those concentric circles that I always talk about. They're what I like to call nirweh, an adjoiner, someone who's adjoined to Israel from the outside, a supporter or an ally of Israel from the outside. And that's what many people are. Many people who I mean, there are people all over the United States and other places who call themselves Gerim, who call themselves converts, but what they really are Niluim. They're really outside supporters of the people of Israel. And one day it will become clear when all of the nation of Israel comes back. We'll see who says, "Oh, I want to come live in the land of Israel, among the people of Israel, and be part of the people of Israel." And who says, "You know what? I love the people of Israel. I want to celebrate the holidays with them. I support them. I support their God Yahweh, and their success is my success. But I'm happy. I'm happy in the United States of America. I'm happy in Switzerland. I'm happy in, I don't know, the Philippines or wherever." So that is a nilweh. And that's also an amazing accomplishment to be a nilweh, but it's different from a ger. So Yitro has the opportunity to be a ger. He says, no, I'm good. I'm a follower, a worshiper. I'm a believer in Yahweh. I've seen his strength. I've seen his ability to save his people, but I don't want to be part of this people. I love this people. I support this people. I am now a follower of the God Yahweh, but I'm going back to Midian and I'm going to live my own life. So that's a decision that each person will have to make when the time comes, or each person maybe in their heart knows where they fall on that spectrum. Okay, verse 10. Yitro Baruch Yahweh asher hitzil etchem miad. So I think we read that. So up to verse 11. Yadati ki gadol Yahweh mikol Elohim. Now I know that Yahweh is greater than all gods. Ki badavar asher zadu alehem. Because of the thing that they conspired against them. So I guess the Zadu, they conspired against them, is speaking about Egypt, and then is speaking about Israel. That's my guess. We can get an English translation on that one. Sometimes pronouns are a little bit hard to resolve, but that's what it seems to me. So basically, Jethro is saying Yahweh is the greatest of all the gods. Does this mean he believes in the existence of other gods? I don't think so. This phrase is used a lot throughout the Tanakh. I think what this is saying is that Jethro now understands that all of these other gods are false gods, and there's only one God, and that's Yahweh. And when he says greater than all the other gods, he means greater than all the other gods, because those other gods don't exist. And we see many examples throughout the Tanakh where it speaks about these other gods, and how Yahweh is greater, is the strongest among the other gods. It doesn't mean that the Tanakh, that loyal Israelites, believe that other gods exist. It's just it's just a rhetorical way of saying that Yahweh is greater than all of these supposed other gods, all of these alleged other gods that all of these stupid surrounding nations think exist. Okay, verse 12. ויקח יתרו חותן משה עולה זבחים לאלוהים. So Yitro brought sacrifices, or burnt offerings, fully burnt offerings. That's an olah. We haven't gotten to the different types of sacrifices yet, but we will when we get into the book of Leviticus. Zvachim is just a general word for sacrifices, slaughtered animals to God. ויבוא אהרון וכל זקני ישראל לאכול לחם עם חותן משה לפני האלוהים. And Aaron and all the elders of Israel came to eat bread, to have a meal with the father-in-law of Moses before God. What does that mean, before God? In that same place where they brought the sacrifices. Okay. And now we have this famous story where Jethro advises Moses. So Jethro is the first, what was it? This management consultant, right? What was it? This idiot Mitt Romney. Was he part of a Bain Capital? Were they management consultants, or I don't know, Boston Consulting, all these scumbags? Well, Moses gets unsolicited advice from a management consultant, a good management consultant named Jethro. And here we go. Okay, any questions, any comments so far? Nope. All right, let's move on. Okay. Waihi mimaharat. So it was the next day, they had a meal together. Waishiv Moshe lishpot et ha'am. Wa ya'amod ha'am al Moshe min aboker ad ha'arev. So the next day, Moses sat down to judge the people, right? He's like the teacher. And the two kids in the schoolyard are, they're fighting over, I don't know, over a baseball bat, or maybe for our friend, what is he calling himself? Aydin Naranj, a cricket bat. And Moshe has to solve all of these, these disputes. So the nation stood before Moses from the morning until the evening. So Moses has a lot of work. If you've ever lived among Jews, we have a lot of arguments. So anyone who's going to sit and solve those arguments is definitely going to have his work cut out for him. Okay, verse 14. Wayar choten Moshe et kol asher oseh la'am. So the Moses' father-in-law saw all that he's doing for the people, or to the people. What is this crazy thing that you're doing for the people? מדוע אתה יושב לבדך וכל עם ניצב עליך מן בוקר עד ערב. What is this that you're doing? I'm paraphrasing here so we can move a little bit more quickly. Why are you sitting alone? And all of the people are appearing before you from the morning until the evening. This is too much work for one person. Verse 15, ויאמר משה לחותנו, כי יבוא אלי העם לדרוש אלוהים. The people are coming to me to find out literally to inquire of God, to find out God's will, find out God's decision, ask for God's, decision in various disputes or in various issues. Okay. יהיה להם דבר בא אליי ושפטתי בין איש ובין רעהו והודעתי את חוקי האלוהים ואת תורתו. Because if there's an issue between them, they come to me and I judge between one man and a man and his fellow man, and I let them know the laws of God and his instructions. So Moshe is laying down the law for the people, as he should be. But verse 17, ויאמר חותן משה אליו, and Moses' father-in-law said to him, לא טוב, הדבר אשר אתה עושה, this thing that you're doing is not good. What you're doing is not good. It's not wise. Verse 18, נבול תיבול גם אתה גם העם הזה אשר עמך, כי כבד ממך הדבר, לא תוכל עשוהו לבדך. נבול תיבול, bal means will waste away, will fall apart. So you, navol tibol, and we have repetition, as I say, I guess pretty much every Torah study we have, repetition means emphasis. So it's often translated as certainly. So you and these people will certainly waste away. These people who are with you will waste away because this thing is too much for you. It's too heavy upon you. You can't do this alone. Verse 19. Now listen to me. Listen to my voice. Listen to my advice. Listen to what I have to say, and I will advise you. And let God be with you. In other words, let God approve it. Hayya ata la'am mula Elohim. Wa eveta ata et dvarim ela Elohim. You will be literally hayya ata la'am mula Elohim. You will be for the people. How can we translate into English? Mula Elohim, literally across from God, but it means you will interact with God for the people. Wa eveta ata et dvarim Elohim, and you will bring matters to God. Okay, in other words, you are going to speak to God about various matters. Verse 20. What is arta et tachukim, and you will enlighten to them zohar from the underlying root zahar, which means to shine bright. So you will enlighten to them, or you will illuminate to them the laws and the instructions. And you will instruct them in the way that they should go, and that which they should do. Paraphrasing a little bit here, so we can just move quickly. And you should search out, should find. Chozeh, hazah means to see, to search out. Hazon is like a vision, like the vision of a prophet. So techazeh, this word right here, means to search out, to look for. You should look for from among the people anshe chayil. So anshe chayil would be reliable people, noble, honorable people. How do they translate it here? Able people. Yir'ei Elohim, those who have fear of God. Anshe emet, men of truth. Sun'ei batzah, those who hate bribery. Samta alem sarei alafim, sarei me'ot, sarei hamishim, sarei asarot. So you're going to look out, you're going to search out good people, basically. Okay? Noble people who fear God, who are men of truth, and who despise, I guess bribery would be, see, get a better translation of that, covetousness. I don't know if I like that translation. They hate corruption. Let's translate this corruption. And you will place them as officers over thousands, officers over hundreds, officers over 50s, and officers over 10s. So now we're going to have a hierarchical system, just like we have in the United States of America. I don't know what they have in Britain, but in the United States of America, let's say in the federal court system, there's a hierarchy, right? There's the district courts, and then there's, what do they call them? The regional courts, or there's the local courts, the district courts, and the Supreme Court. So anything that cannot be solved by the local court is taken to the district court. Anything that can't be solved by the district court is taken to the Supreme Court. It's the same idea here. Okay, so there's going to be a hierarchy. So it's going to be broken down into thousands, hundreds, 50s, and 10s. So we do a quick calculation. So we have, again, it's not really clear exactly what this means in terms of numbers, but let's say, so below Moses is going to be the chiefs over 1,000. So let's say each chief is responsible for 1,000 people. Then he would have 10 chiefs under him, which are responsible for 100 people. Then 2 chiefs under him, each of which are responsible for 50 people. And then 5 chiefs under him, each of which are responsible for 10 people. Again, it's not really clear. This may just be a phrase, but if we were to take it literally in that sense, then every 1,000 people would have a main chief, 10 secondary chiefs. Then I guess each of those secondary chiefs would have 2 more tertiary chiefs, and then 5 more quaternary chiefs, 4th level chiefs. Okay, so we do a quick calculation. So there would be 1. So over each 1,000 people would be 1 times 10. That's 10 plus the original 1. So that's 11. And then another 2. It's 11 plus 10 times 2. So 11 plus 20 is 31. And then for each of those 20, there would be another 5. So it's another 100. So 100, if I'm doing the math correctly, 131. So each 1,000 people, again, if we're taking this literally, each 1,000 people would have 131 officers over them. That seems a little bit too much. So I don't know if we need to take this literally, but basically the idea is that, and this phrase, Sarei Alafim, Sarei Ma'ot, Sarei Hamishim, Sarei Aserot is used many times throughout the Torah. But if we take it literally, that's 131, if I did the math correctly, officers in 4 levels over every 1,000 people. Alrighty. Verse 22. But it may just mean just break things down hierarchically, right? ושפטו את העם בכל עת, והיה כל הדבר הגדול, יביאו אליך וכל הדבר הקטון ישפטו הם. And they will judge the people, day by day or at all times. And anything that's too big for them, they'll bring to you. And everything that's small enough for them to solve, they will judge. And they will lighten the burden for you, and they will carry the burden together with you. Okay, so we get the idea. Whether these numbers are to be taken literally or not, the idea is that there's now going to be a hierarchy of judges, just like we have in the American system, the local courts, the district courts, the Supreme Court. Okay, so if the Supreme Court were to hear every single case, every single federal case in the United States of America, then they couldn't, right? It would be too much work for them. So it's exactly, or it's a similar system to what we have in the United States of America, and I'm sure many other countries, where there's a hierarchy of courts. Anything that can't be solved by a lower court gets kicked up to the next level. Anything that can't be solved by that level gets kicked up to the Supreme Court. Here we have, if we're to take this literally, we have Moses. He's the Supreme Court, basically. Notice he alone is the Supreme Court. There's no Sanhedrin here. Okay? No rabbinical bullshit Sanhedrin. Just him alone, because he's a prophet. He takes, if he can't solve it, then he asks God. He has direct contact with God. That's the idea of the judicial system in Israel, is that at the top of the hierarchy is a prophet. That's the idea. That's why the rabbis are a bunch of freeloaders. They're a bunch of liars. They have no direct connection with God, but they claim they do. They're false prophets because they claim that their oral law is somehow, the word of God, but they have no prophet among them. And the idea of the judicial system in Israel is that at the top of the judicial system is a prophet. That's what the judges were. All of the judges, I think maybe there's one exception that's not mentioned explicitly, but the judges in the book of Judges, they were all prophets. Every single one of them. Again, maybe one exception that's not mentioned explicitly. Then, after that, we have the kings. Okay, so the kings were not prophets, but they had prophets at hand. Okay, David had Shmuel and Nathan and Nathan and other prophets. They had a prophet at hand. Okay, and we know that God did not want Israel to do away with the system of judges and adopt a king instead. Israel was chastised for doing so. That's exactly the story at the end of the book of 2 Samuel. No, 1 Samuel. Right? Not the end. The middle of the book of 1 Samuel, where the people clamor for a king, and Shmuel gives this long speech. Well, first of all, he's upset that the people are rejecting him. And then Yahweh tells him, no, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. And then Shmuel gives this long speech about all of the problems that are going to come, or all the complications that'll come on Israel for electing a king, for clamoring for a king. But they wanted it, and that's what they got. The kings were kind of a downgrade from the judges, because none of the kings were prophets. David was not a prophet. Solomon was not a prophet. He did have a dream where God appeared to him in the dream, but that's not I mean, it's not prophecy, right? But this was the idea. This was the original idea for Israel, that at the top of the chain would be a prophet who could speak with Yahweh, not bother him every 2 seconds. You know, what do I do here? What do I do? But when things were too difficult, to go to him and to find out what the decision is. So ultimately, Yahweh is the judge on Israel. He's not some judge off in heaven. He's making day-to-day decisions when we can't make it ourselves. He's making the day-to-day decisions for Israel. And this is why the rabbis are liars, because they pretend they have all the answers. They don't have any answers. They don't have crap, but they pretend they do. We Karaites are honest. We know we don't have the answers. We know we can't make decisions, or we can't really understand the will of Yahweh without a prophet, without prophets among us. We're honest about it. That's why the answer for myself, even when I'm just learning Torah on my own, is I think this might be what the Torah is saying. I think this might be what the Torah is intending, but I'm not sure. I'm not a prophet, and I don't have access to a prophet, so I don't know 100% for sure. I wish I did. I wish we all did, but we don't. That's the reality. That's the curse of exile, that we don't have access to prophets. We don't really know the will of Yahweh, and we're left to our own devices. So the rabbis come along, and they're almost like Jesus, right? Jesus comes along, right? If you look at Christians, they rely on Jesus for all the answers, because they need a daddy who's going to make them feel safe and happy and everything's good and that all the answers are there. Well, the rabbinical Jews are no different. They rely on the rabbis for all the answers. But how did the rabbis come up with their answers? The rabbis were a second temple period and post-second temple period. They destroyed the second temple on purpose, in my opinion. Just look at what happened in 63 BCE when they invited the Romans to conquer Jerusalem. And the Pharisees, followers of the Pharisees, opened the gates of Jerusalem and allowed the Romans in. These same Romans, 133 years later, would destroy the second temple. So they pretend to have the answers, but where do they get their answers from? They get the answers from their answers from the most bizarre methods, from Hellenistic rhetorical methods. There are articles written by an absolutely brilliant Bible scholar who's now dead, a Jew who was at Oxford, I believe Oxford, professor at Oxford, absolutely brilliant guy named David Dowd. If you ever get a chance to read some of his stuff, you'll realize that the brilliance of this guy. So he speaks extensively about how the rabbis used Hellenistic rhetorical methods that were popular in Hellenistic times to come up with a lot of their interpretations for the Torah. These people are nuts. They're crazy. Their interpretations are crazy. I mean, look at that fool, David Bar Chaim, with those stupid amulets on his head, who thinks he's really pious and thinks he's really following the Torah more than anyone else, and he looks like a complete idiot, right? What I showed you before. The guy goes to the bank. He goes to the supermarket with these stupid amulets on his head. That's a wise man? It's like the Haredim in Jerusalem, who walk around when it's 105 degrees outside. Here, I'll write it down. He was my last rabbi before I became a Karaite. He made me a Karaite. You can look him up. The name of his YouTube channel is Machon Shilo. Okay, so there you go. Look him up. Look at this fool. I mean, I've listened to some of his talks. They're so irrelevant and boring. Like, he'll talk about some minutia of halacha, or like what version of the Shmona Esrei should we. Who gives a damn? Oh, the professor, David Dowd. Man, this guy's amazing. Jewish also, by the way. He's dead already. He died in, I think, the early 2000s. Amazing guy. Amazing. And I have his article. It's called something like Rabbinical Hermeneutics and Hellenistic Methods of Interpretation, or something like that. And if you want, I could send it to you. Just remind me later, Aiden Larange. Yeah, amazing. You'll love this article. Let's be honest and admit we don't have the answers. We don't have access to prophets today. We don't have access to the true will of Yahweh. Yahweh may come tomorrow with a prophet and tell me that half of my interpretations, half of my understandings of the Torah are wrong. And if he does, I'll accept it. Because what do I know? I just, like anyone else, I'm just trying my best to understand under far less than perfect circumstances. You know, I believe my heart is straight, and therefore I come up with explanations that are true, hopefully, much of the time, but who knows, right? That's why I always have my eyes and ears open, and I'll listen to anyone who can say, no, you're wrong about this, and prove it to me. I'm happy when somebody does this. I'm thrilled when somebody does it. And I listen to all kinds of interpretations. I'll listen to secular scholars. This is one guy, like listening to Chief named what's his name? Oh God, I can't remember his name. Joe Biden, secular scholar at Yale University. Brilliant guy, but he comes from a very secular point of view. I'll listen to Christians. I'll filter out all their nonsense when they get into the Jesus stuff. But some of these Christians are brilliant. And there's one that I've been listening to. I think I mentioned him a bunch of times. He's already dead. Amazing, amazing guy named David Pawson. If you can just filter out a lot of the Christian stuff he says, you'll get amazing, amazing interpretations or understandings of the Old Testament. He does Old Testament stuff. He does New Testament stuff. You know, I'll listen to these people more than I'll listen to rabbinical Jews, because when I listen to rabbinical Jews, it's just such nonsense that they say. I mean, they could speak an hour of just complete nonsense with all kinds of bizarre midrashim, bizarre interpretations. I can't even listen to these people half the time. I really can't. I can't stomach them. They make me want to vomit. I'd rather listen to Christians, because at least I can filter out when they start giving the Jesus stuff. I can identify it and filter it out. When you listen to a rabbi, if you don't know the Tanakh really well, you won't even know when he's quoting from the Tanakh or when he's quoting from something that was made up by the rabbis 1,000 years later or 2,000 years later. When you listen to a Christian, at least you can filter it out. When he starts saying, starts talking about the only true redemption is the blood, the blood of the innocent lamb. And okay, got it. I gotcha. Disagree, but I see where you're coming from. All right. We can agree to disagree on that one. So, and there are many other scholars out there. Another brilliant one, also from Yale University, is Christine Hayes. Oh, she's great. I mean, so is Joe Biden. I disagree with him on almost everything he says, but he's a very brilliant guy. Christine Hayes, wonderful. She's a non-Jew. So Pawson is a non-Jew. He's, I guess, a Christian minister, was a Christian minister. Joe Biden is a secular Jew, very brilliant, but comes from a very secular point of view. David Daub was secular Jewish, now gone. Christine Hayes, also a professor at Yale, who has a whole series on the Old Testament. Brilliant, brilliant. She's a non-Jew, but she's also a Talmudic scholar. She's an expert on the Talmud. In fact, I think that's her main expertise, and she's just brilliant. So there are many, different people to listen to out there, and I'm constantly finding new ones. All right, let's move on. Verse 23. But I just can't stomach the rabbis. I'm telling you, I can listen to a Christian before I listen to the rabbis. I'm serious. A Christian preaching the Old Testament, unless the whole lecture is completely on, even that's interesting, because then I see how they can distort the Tanakh to come up with their, defense for their false god. But I'd rather listen to a Christian than a rabbi. I'm serious. I could tolerate David Pawson a lot more than I could tolerate listening to a Rabbi Bar Chaim lecture. I can't stomach that guy because it's bullshit. What do I care about the correct, version of the Shemona Esrei? What do I care? I don't care. It's not relevant. And he thinks it's so relevant to the future of the nation. It's not relevant. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a damn. except for his small circle of followers and whatever other rabbinical Jews are around, which are a minority. Verse 23, Im et davar azet aseh Elohim. So if you do this thing and God commands it, in other words, don't, this is my suggestion, but clear it with God. Okay? Then you'll be able to hold up, literally to stand. And all of these people will come to their place in peace. Meaning you'll be able to get them through the desert into the land of Israel, successfully, in peace. Now, at this point, remember, the Israelites and Jethro, they have no idea that they're going to be wandering through the desert for 40 years. That only happens later with the incident of the spies. That occurs later. Right? They think they're just, I don't know, they didn't go, they didn't go straight up the coast to Israel. They went around a little bit. It says that explicitly because God was afraid they would get scared, if they were attacked by the Philistines and run back to Egypt. But they're figuring, we'll be in the desert for a couple months, a year, who knows. But they don't know, nobody knows at this point it's going to be 40 years in the desert. Remember that. Verse 24. So Moses listened to the suggestion, to the voice of his father-in-law, and did everything that he suggested, everything that he said. Verse 5, so Moshe found honorable men from among Israel and placed them as heads over the people, officers of thousands, officers of hundreds, officers of 50s, officers of 10s. Verse 26, ושפטו את העם בכל עת את הדבר הקשה יביאון אל משה וכל הדבר הקטון ישפטוהם. So, שפטו את העם בכל עת, and they judged the people on a regular basis, literally at all times. And the difficult cases, the difficult things, issues they brought to Moses, and all of the small issues they judged themselves. וישלח משה את חותנו וילך לו אל ארצו. And Moshe sent away his father-in-law and Yelech lo, and he returned to his land. We have Yelech lo, like Lech Lecha, just pointing that out for whoever's interested. It doesn't say Yelech lo, meaning, he got his butt back to his land. So Moshe, and by the way, this is more proof. Here we have the word Wayishalach. So this is the same verb exactly in a different form that Moshe uses to say when to say they sent his wife away on his way back to Egypt. Let's find that for a second. Shiluchecha in verse 2, which again, one particular Karaite whose name shall never cross my lips, says that this means he divorced Zipporah. That's a bunch of baloney. Just means sent her away. And here we have the proof, because here he does exactly the same thing. Why Yishalach? And he sent away his father-in-law. Doesn't mean he divorced his father-in-law. He sent away his father-in-law. And so by that, here, it doesn't necessarily mean, it can mean in certain contexts to divorce permanently. It just means sent her away, sent her back home. I was listening to, I listened to this one guy on YouTube named Michael Francesi, an ex-mafia guy, I guess growing up in New York and actually living in a neighborhood which was infested with mafia people. I didn't even realize that until I was an adult, but the place was basically infested with mafia people. I don't know. A lot of New Yorkers are fascinated by the mafia. And so this guy, Michael Francesi, you can find him online. Excellent guy. He's Christian, but a really amazing guy. And what was I saying? I must be going senile. What was I going to say? I can't remember what the heck I was going to say. Oh well, it happens. Yes, that's it. Thought escaped me. Spell his last name. Yeah. Hold on a second. I'll find it. Yeah, he's really cool. There we go. This guy. Nice guy. It's really a stand-up guy. Michael Francesi, crime boss. Should say former crime boss. Here. I like his channel. I mean, sometimes it's too much. I just can't listen to these mafia stories all day long, but a really good guy. Trump supporter. Say, why did I bring up Michael Francesi? I don't know. Okay, onward. Anyway, that's the end of Exodus 18. So Moshe sent away his father-in-law, didn't divorce his father-in-law. They weren't married. No, this wasn't no gay marriage back in the desert. So he sent away his father-in-law, and that same word is used for the wife. So no, he didn't divorce his wife. He just sent her back home because he had some dangerous stuff to do. Okay, that's chapter 18. Any comments, any questions? Okay. All right, let's see. We've been going at it for almost 3 hours. So we're supposed to get to, I think, the end of chapter 20. Let's go on to 19. 20 is the 10 Commandments. So you all know the 10 Commandments. We could just skip that part, right? It's kind of a joke. But all right, so here we are. All right. So Israel at Mount Sinai. בחודש השלישי לצאת בני ישראל מארץ מצרים ביום הזה באו מדבר סיני. So on the third month of the Israelites, the children of Israel exiting from the land of Egypt, on this very day, they came to the desert of Sinai. So there's a lot to unpack here. I think I've mentioned this before. I could take this in a lot of directions, but one of the things, okay, so I'll get back to this Rabbi Bar Chaim. When I first started becoming a Karaite, I went to him and I said, well, what proof do we have that Chag HaShavuot falls out on what they believe is the same day as the giving of the Torah, the giving of the 10 Commandments? And he brought me this verse. Now we know that there's absolutely no indication in the Torah as to when Chag HaShavuot falls out. We just know that it's 50 days, or actually 49 days after, or 50 days after that first Shabbat, which Karaite tradition, since it's not clear 100% from the Torah, says is the Shabbat that falls within the 7 days of Chag HaMatzot. But the rabbis believe, so the rabbis count Chag HaShavuot from the second day, or the day after the first day of Chag HaMatzot. So they have a definite date. Given their fixed calendar, they have a definite date as to when Chag HaShavuot falls out. And it's is it the third day of the third month? Let's see. Shavuot. So I guess they think it's a third day of Sivan, which is the third day of the third month. So they have a fixed date for Shavuot. We don't have a fixed day for Shavuot. We count 50 days, or we count 49 days from the Shabbat that occurs within Chag HaMatzot, and then the following day is Chag HaShavuot. So I went to this Rabbi Bar Chaim when I first had become a Karaite, and I was still, I wasn't 100% convinced. Yeah, what about the Haftarah? That's a good point. Maybe we'll get to it. We could do the Haftarah. It's. I always say we're going to do the Haftarah and we never get to it. All right, maybe I'll do the Haftarah, but let me make this point first. So actually, just give me 1 minute just to go get something. Be right back. Okay, we're back. So I went to this Rabbi Bar Chaim and I said, "What's your proof that that Hag HaShavuot falls out on the same day as the giving of the Torah?" And he pointed me to this verse. Well, these verses. So he says, so verse 1, so he says that this, so what does it say literally? So on the third month of the exiting of the children of Israel from the land of Egypt, on this day, they came to the desert of Sinai. And he says that it means on this day means on the first day, on this very day. Okay? First of all, that's not even necessarily true. Okay? It just could mean on a certain particular day. And then well, let's move on and I'll explain as we go along. Okay? So he said that this means the first day of the third month. Okay? And I'll explain, hopefully if we have enough time, I'll explain where I'm coming from. Let's just move on for now. So they traveled from Rephidim and they came to the desert of Sinai and they camped in the desert. And there Israel camped in front of or across from the mountain. This is talking about Mount Sinai. Moshe went up to God. And Yahweh called out to him from the mountain. Lemor, it said, so you shall say to the house of Jacob, and you shall recite to the children of Israel. You've seen that which I did to Egypt, that I lifted you up on the wings of eagles, and I brought you to me. shimartem et briti va'aytim li tzchula mikol ha'amim ki li kol ha'aretz. And now, if you will certainly listen to my voice and keep my covenant and be a treasured nation, or be a treasured among all of the peoples to me, because because all of the earth is mine, all of the world is mine. Attempt uli mamlechet kohanim, and you shall be for me a kingdom of priests, v'goy kadosh, and a holy nation. Ela dvarim asher tdaber el bnei Israel. These are the things you should speak to the children of Israel. So they arrive in the desert of Sinai. Okay. Moses goes up to the mountain. God tells him, say this stuff to the children of Israel. Okay. I brought you out of the land of Egypt. I've lifted you up on eagle's wings. You shall be a treasured nation to me, etc. Okay. But let's just backtrack here. Okay. Verse 18 was about Jethro. Okay. Where did Jethro come? It says explicitly. Let's find it. In verse 5, Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses, and his sons, meaning Moses' sons, and his wife, came to Moses to the desert where he was camping at the mountain of God. So in 18, they're already camped at the mountain of God. Okay? And Jethro comes. But here it says they came to Mount Sinai, or to the desert of Sinai, and they camped at the mountain of God. Okay? Negedahar. When? On that very day in the third month, which again, this Bar Chaim dude says is the first day of the third month. So how is it that Jethro, in the previous chapter, came to them when they were already camped at the mountain of God? And the mountain of God is the same as Horeb, it's the same as Mount Sinai. So some scholars say it just means that the Torah is out of order. But I don't think that's what it means at all. Okay? I think the way I understand it is that this is not saying they came, this is saying they had come. This is now hearkening back. This is telling a story of when they're already there. And now after that, all of this other stuff happens, but hearkening back. Okay, this is the way the Torah works. Okay? The Torah is saying they had come to the desert of Sinai on this very day in the third month, which let's even go with Bar Chaim dude and says who says it's the first day of the third month. Okay? This is not the Torah out of order. This is now kind of a new story. And to get the context of the new story, we're going back to when they arrived at the desert of Sinai. So after they arrived, we know for a fact that this story with Jethro happened. Okay? And we know that it at least took, he came, he ate with them one night. The next day, he gives them he gives Moshe the advice of making the hierarchical court system. Moses then searches out people and makes a hierarchical. That must have taken at least a couple of days. Okay? And this happened after they arrived in the desert of Sinai. So this is already pushing us past the third day of the third month. Okay? If we want to even believe that this means the first day of the third month is when they arrived in the desert of Sinai, for all of that Jethro stuff to occur it's got to take at least a couple. We know it takes at least 2 days and probably longer than that. So it's already pushing us past this third day of the third month. Okay? Disproving the idea that this verse implies, because now we're going to see that they're supposed to purify themselves 3 days. And that was Bar Chaim dude's proof that after that they get the 10 commandments. So it happens on the third day of the third month. Okay? This is a load of baloney because so much happens in between when they had gotten here to when they actually have to purify themselves for 3 days and get the 10 commandments, including the whole Jethro story, because we know it happened at the mountain of God. Okay, if this even means the first day of the third month, which is not even clear. Okay, to make a long story short, Bar Chaim dude is full of crap. Okay, and I'll continue to show why as we go through this chapter. Okay, so now we're down here. So God gives a speech that Moses is supposed to say to the people of Israel. I raised you up I freed you from Egypt. I raised you up on the pinions of eagles. I made you a treasured nation, and you shall be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. So verse 7, Yavo Moshe v'yikra liziknei ha'am v'yasem lifnehem et kol ha'dvarim ha'ela asher tziwahu Yahweh. So Moses came and called the elders of the people and placed all these things, all these words before them, which God had commanded him. In other words, to say this speech. Okay. V'ya'anu kol ha'am yachtav yomru kol asher diber Yahweh na'aseh. And all of the people answered and said and they said, all of that which Yahweh has spoken we will do. V'shev Moshe et divrei ha'am el Yahweh. And Moses returned the word of the people to Yahweh. So now he's going up. So we have so once they get to the desert of Sinai, we have the whole Jethro thing. Now we have this whole thing. Moses goes up to the mountain. God gives him this speech. He goes down, assembles the elders and all of the people of Israel, tells them, they say yes. Now Moses goes back up to the mountain. ויאמר יהוה אל משה, הנה אנוכי בא אליך בעב ענן. And Yahweh says to Moses, behold, I come to you, or I will come to you in the thickness of the cloud. In order that the people will listen, will pay attention, as if they're not going to pay attention, when I speak with them, or with you, and also that they should believe in you, Moses. In other words, they should understand that I've chosen you as the leader, Leolam, forever, or for Moshe et divrei am el Yahweh. And Moses returned the word of the people to Yahweh. In other words, that they will follow what God wants. Verse 10. Yomer Yahweh El Moshe, and Yahweh said to Moses, Lech el ha'am v'kidashtem hayom v'machar v'kipsu simlotam. And so Yahweh says to Moses, go to the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and tell them that they should wash their clothes. And they should be ready on the third day, because on the third day, Yahweh will come down before the eyes of all the people on Har Sinai. So now we have, when he goes back up, now God says, spend 2 days washing your clothing, sanctifying yourselves, which basically means becoming ritually pure. And then on the third day, I'll come down and speak to you. So Bar Chaim dude says, this is the first day. Now we have 2 days. Okay, so the first and second day, and then on the third day of the third month, because he believes that this is the first day of the third month. So 2 days of purification, and then on the third day, which will be the third day of the third month, that's when God comes down and gives the 10 commandments. He ignores, Bar Chaim dude ignores the whole Jethro story, which happened after they arrived here. He ignores this whole thing where Moses goes up, comes down, then goes back up, and then comes down. Okay, twice, which happens. And then we have 2 days of sanctification followed by the third day. Okay, and we know the Jethro story takes at least 2 days, probably longer. We know this third thing couldn't all be done in 1 day, or very unlikely. The whole point is that it pushes the day of the giving of the Torah, which is never mentioned explicitly when it is, way past the third day of the third month, therefore showing that it's complete baloney, or if I were to say it in French, bullshit, that the Torah was given on the third day of the third month. If this verse even means the first day of the third month, which also is not necessarily the case, because this phrase b'yom hazeh, okay, or b'etzem hayom hazeh, on this very day is used many times just to point out on a particular day. It doesn't say which day. Let's say it means the first day of the third month. Even if that's the case, then there's no indication that all of this stuff, plus the 2 days of purification, or there is indication that all of this other stuff, the visiting of Jethro, the giving of his advice, Moses carrying out of Jethro's advice, setting up the hierarchical court system, Moses going up and down the mountain twice, carrying messages back and forth between Yahweh and the people, and then 2 days of purification, followed by a third day when God is going to come down and give the third commandments. There's no way, okay, that this could not push us past the third day of the third month, thereby proving that the rabbi's contention that Chag Shavuot falls on the third day of the third month, because they believe it falls on a set day. It's a bit more complicated than that, but once they implemented the fixed calendar, they believe it falls on a set day. Before the fixed calendar, there'd be a bit of flexibility, not much, a day or two, but it clearly pushes it way past the third day of the third month, showing that the rabbi's idea that Chag Shavuot is the same as Chag Matan Torah, which they believe, they've actually changed the meaning of Chag Shavuot. Chag Shavuot has nothing to do with the giving of the Torah at all. It has to do with the first fruits of the wheat harvest. They changed it to a holiday celebrating the giving of the Torah, using this BS argument that that the giving of the Torah occurred on the third day of the third month, which we've clearly shown it doesn't. Okay. All right. Let me just read to the end of 19, then maybe we'll do the Haftarah a little bit. As Mr. Lerange requested. Verse 12. והגבלת את העם סביב לאמור, שמרו לכם עלות ההר ונגוע בקצהו כל הנוגע בהר מות יומת. So put a fence around the mountain. Okay, this is going to be God's holy province. Don't come near it. If you touch it, anyone who breaks past that fence is going to die. Okay, it's too holy. לא תיגע בו יד, כי כל יסכל או ירו ירא, אם בהמה אם איש לא יחיה במשוך היובל, המה יעלו בהר. So nothing should touch even this fence, or should go inside the fence, the province of the fence. They'll be stoned or shot with arrows. Whether it's an animal or a man, he will not live. Bimshoch hayovel. Yovel is a horn or a shofar, basically, trumpet. When the trumpet sounds, Hema yalu bahar, they will go up on the mountain. That's speaking about Moses and Aaron. Not Moses, no, I'm sorry. Let's see. So now Moses comes down off the mountain, sanctifies or makes the people holy, meaning tells them to sanctify themselves for the third day. And they wash their clothes. Be ready for on the third day. Do not approach a woman, meaning don't have relations with a woman. Why don't have relations with a woman? Because as we see in the book of Leviticus, when we speak about what's usually called ritual purity and impurity, ejaculation inside a woman ritually impurifies. I don't like the word ritually impurifies, but that's the way it's translated, both the man and the woman. So basically, you have to be in a state of ritual purity, just as if you were going up to the temple or the tabernacle. This is now, wherever God is, that becomes like the temple. That becomes the tabernacle. You must be in a state of ritual purity to approach the place where God is. when God rests in the tabernacle on the cover of the ark, or between the cherubim that are on the cover of the ark, then that becomes the place where you have to be in a state of ritual purity. When that place is later relocated to Jerusalem in the permanent temple, then that becomes a state where you have to be in a state of ritual purity. Okay? Now, again, done a lot of rabbi bashing today, but I'll do a little bit more. So the rabbis distorted the Torah and preached that you have to be in a state of ritual purity all the time, which is why rabbinical Jews are constantly going to the mikveh. And if you've ever been to one, it ain't a pretty sight. And they're constantly trying to ritually purify themselves because they believe that you should be in a state of ritual purity wherever you go as much as possible. That's a distortion of the Torah. That mixes the holy and the profane, because the Torah tells us the only time you need to be in a state of ritual purity is when you go to the province of God, which is going to be later the tabernacle, and then after that the permanent place in Jerusalem of the Holy Temple. Okay, the Karaites, the Egyptian Karaites, do a similar stupidity. They say you have to be in a state of ritual purity. Of course, we know we can't be in a state of ritual purity because there's no red heifer ceremony, but to become in as much of a state of purity as possible. In other words, they say you have to take a shower before you enter their synagogue so that you're in a state of ritual purity. Again, they're confusing a profane place with a holy place. God is not literally in that synagogue. His presence is not there. There's no Ark of the Covenant there. There's no cherubim. There's no God living between the cherubim, okay, in a synagogue. It's not a place where you need to be in a state of ritual purity. So the Karaites, following the Pharisees, one of the reasons that it's claimed that the Pharisees are named the Pharisees, in Hebrew it's the Parushim, is because and Parush means separated from, or distinct from, they separated themselves from ritual impurity. Well, the Egyptian Karaites, who for centuries now have been falling into the same traps of the rabbis, to the state now where they're barely, they're, well, I won't go that far, but in many ways they're not distinguishable from the rabbis. They've basically kowtowed, they've put their noses to the boot of the rabbis and kissed those boots for centuries now. So they've come up with the same idea that you have to be in a state of ritual purity to enter their synagogues. That's a bunch of baloney. The only time you have to be in a state of ritual purity is when you approach God himself, meaning where his presence is, where his what they like to call the Shekhinah is, where he dwells. And that place doesn't exist now. It will exist on Mount Sinai when he comes down. Later, it exists in the tabernacle once the Ark of the Covenant is made and the tablets are placed within, and that later will be reloaded permanently to Jerusalem during the First Temple period in the time of Solomon. Okay? Yeah, that too. They call their Chachamim rabbis. There you go. As if you needed any more proof, right? It's like they tell you exactly what they're thinking. They gave up the fight a long time ago. They're useless. It is a joke. And when when people say the Karaites are dying out, they're damn right, because of the Egyptian Karaites. Egyptian Karaism has no future. What we have has all the future in the world. You just have to grab the bull by the horns. So, Aiden Orange, we're going to talk about TikTok. We're going to start kicking some ass. All right. Verse 16. Let's get through this chapter. So it was on the third day, not the third day of the first month, the third day after Moses told them to start making themselves holy. And there were thunder and lightning and a heavy cloud, thick cloud, alahar on the mountain. And the very heavy or the very strong voice of a shofar, of a animal horn. And all of the people who were in the camp were shook in fear. They were the Quakers and the Shakers. And by the way, Yechrad, that's where you get the word the Charedim. Charedim literally means the Shakers or the Quakers. They're the Hebrew Shakers or the Hebrew Quakers. Most people have heard of the Quakers. Very few people have heard of the Shakers. But there was also a group called the Shakers. I've visited their hometown, I guess, one of their home bases. It's in Western Massachusetts, in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. If you're ever in the Berkshires in Western Massachusetts, you can go visit Shaker Village, and you can learn about the Shakers, distinct from the Quakers. Verse 17. Moshe et ha'am likrat Elohim, and Moshe brought the people out towards God. Mina machane, from the camp, meaning they were in the camp. Now they were brought out to the edge of the mountain. Remember, they're not allowed to touch the mountain or they'll die. Yatzvu tahar, and they assembled themselves at the base of the mountain. So here we go. Here's God's big, laser show. Verse 18. Wahar Sinai Ashan Kulo, and the mountain and Mount Sinai was completely covered in smoke. Mipnei asher yarad alav Yahweh, because God had come down, because Yahweh had come down upon it. Ba'esh, in fire. So there was fire. The fire is not seen; it's surrounded by the smoke. You only see the smoke. Ya'al ashonok shana kivshan, and its smoke, meaning smoke from this fire, went up like the fire from a furnace or from an oven, right? Chimney. Ichrad kol hahar me'od, and the entire mountain shook. So the people here were shaking. Ichrad kol ha'am, and now the mountain was shaking. So everything's shaking. And again, this is where you get the word Karaite, which is the Hebrew word for the Shabbat Shalom Desiree Logan, which is the Hebrew word for the ultra-Orthodox. And by the way, I just want to make clear that even though I constantly attack the rabbis, I would say most of my close friends are actually Orthodox Jews, including Orthodox rabbis. Okay? I don't blame the individual Orthodox Jews for being caught up in the cult. I blame those who really know better, like this Or Chaim dude. I blame people like him because he should know better. Okay? But your average rabbi, I have friends who are Orthodox rabbis, I have friends who are Orthodox Jews. Many of them have already kind of seen the light or starting to see the light. They're definitely out of the box thinkers. But I don't blame your average congregational rabbi, because those are just, they're not leaders. They're just local rabbis. It's the leaders who are to be held responsible, or those who place themselves as leaders. But he called a shofar holech chazek, and the sound of the shofar, the shofars, became stronger, got stronger. Holech chazek ma'od got stronger until it became very strong. Moshe daber wa Elohim ya'anenu b'kol, and Moshe spoke, and God answered him with a voice. So now the Israelites are actually going to hear the voice of Yahweh. Verse 20, وَيَرِدْ Yahweh al har Sinai el Rosh Har, and Yahweh came down upon the mountain, on Mount Sinai, to the tip of the mountain, the head of the mountain. V'yikra Yahweh leMoshe, and Yahweh called out to Moses, el Rosh Har, from the head of the mountain, v'ya'al Moshe, and Moshe went up, or to the head of the mountain, and Moshe went up. Now Moshe is ascending the mountain. وَيِمَر Yahweh el Moshe, red ha'ed ba'am pen ye'su el Yahweh. And he said, and Yahweh said to Moshe, no, go back down and literally bear witness to the people, lest they break through the boundary, literally, lest they destroy the boundary, El Yahweh, and enter to the province of Yahweh, Lirot v'nafal mimenu rav, in order to see, and many of them die. Okay, so in other words, the people are now maybe pressing. It's like a Taylor Swift concert where they're all pressing against the stage or something like that, right? I don't know who's bigger these days, Yahweh or Taylor Swift. I don't even know who this bitch is, but apparently she's very popular. Oops, sorry for my French. But so the people are going to, God is afraid that people are going to break through the boundary that's been set up or break onto the mountain, and many are going to die. V'rama kohenim v'niyashim el Yahweh v'yitkadshu pen yifrotz bahem Yahweh. And also the priests who had approached, who approached God, in other words, who serve God, they had also purified themselves, lest Yahweh breaks out upon them, or basically kills them, right? So what priests? We don't even hear about the priests yet. Aaron is not even given the priesthood yet. That's a whole discussion in and of itself. Maybe there were some proto-priests before Aaron was given the priesthood. Those who had been identified as priests. Later on, that's explicitly given to Aaron and his sons. Vayomer Moshe el Yahweh, and Moses said to Yahweh, Lo yuchal ha'am la'alot el har Sinai. The people can't go up onto Mount Sinai. Ki ata ha'lota banu, because you bore witness to us. Lemor agbel et ha'ar v'kidashto, to place a barrier around the mountain and sanctify it. Right, so the people can't break through because we placed a fence around it. Okay, so it is him and Aaron who are going up. So Yahweh said to him, go down and come up, you and Aaron, with you, Kohanim, whoever they are at this point, and make sure that the people don't break through, lest Yahweh breaks out. This Yahweh literally bursts out upon them. And Moshe went down to the people and said to them, here we have the 10 Commandments. I'm sorry. Moshe went down to the people and told them. In other words, told them, don't break through the fence. Okay, and now God speaks. And this is the 10 Commandments. I will read it through without any commentary as much as possible so we can finish. And then I don't know if I'm going to do the Haftarah. I'm kind of tired. Yes, Eliyahu Bachiachi would be an example of a Karaite telling himself to the rabbis. In fact, many say that he was the first one to do so. He started this trend, which now has led to the disgrace, which is the Egyptian Karaites. They really are a disgrace to Karaism. Okay, verse 1. Vaydaber Elohim et kol advarim ha'ele lemor. And God spoke all of these words. It said, Anochi Yahweh Elohecha asher otziticha me'eretz Mitzrayim mibeit avadim. I am Yahweh, your God, who took you out, brought you out of the land of Egypt from the house of slaves, from the slave pits. The house of slaves, the slave house. So first, Yahweh is identifying himself. Anochi Yahweh, we see this many times. Whenever Yahweh wants to really point something out or really say something's important, he'll say Ani Yahweh or Anochi Yahweh. Lo yeh lecha Elohim acharim ad panai. You shall not have other gods before me, literally upon my face. Does this mean that Yahweh believes that other gods exist? Of course not. There are no other gods. But it means that people might believe that other gods exist and that the children of Israel should never accept or worship those gods. Lo ta'aseh lecha pesel, v'chol tmuna asher b'shamayim. Should not make for yourself a pesel, is like a statue. V'chol tmuna, and any likeness, asher b'shamayim, which is in the heavens, me'ma'al above, asher ba'aretz, and which is on the ground, mitachat below, asher b'mayim mitachat ha'aretz, and which is in the seas underneath the land. Lo tishtachaveh. Lo tishtachaweh. Remember, before we saw yishtachu, and here we see tishtachaweh, just like Yahweh and Yahu. I'll say no more. Go follow the 15-part series of Hebrew Gospel Guy. Unfortunately, he's a Messianic, but again, he doesn't really focus on that. This 15-part series. So, lo tishtachaweh lehem v'lo ta'avdeim. Do not bow down before them and do not serve them. Anochi Yahweh Elohecha, because I am Yahweh your God. El Kana, a jealous God, Ked Avon Avot Al Manim, who visits or who punishes the sin of the fathers upon the sons, Al Shlishim, until the third generation, Al Riveim, the Sonai, and to the fourth generation, for those who hate me. And who does kindness for thousands of generations to those who love me and those who keep my commandments. So I think I pointed this out last year, but hold on a second. I can't now. Okay, I got to do this. When I'm done, I'll do the more. Okay. Okay. So here it says in verse 4, don't make an image of anything in the heavens, on the earth, below the earth. And then it says, don't bow down. Well, this is a particular, I don't know if it's grammatical, but a particular textual characteristic of the Torah, where if it says one thing and then another, it really means the second thing. So many people misunderstand this, and they think it means don't make a statue at all. It doesn't mean that. It means don't make a statue in order, or one that you will then worship and bow down to. What's my proof? We know that Solomon, when he made his throne, he adorned it with statues of lions on either side. This is before Solomon went apostate towards the end of his days. This is when he was building his throne in the temple, right? And we have many other examples of statues being made by righteous people. Okay, so it doesn't mean you can't make a statue. You can make a statue. You just can't worship it as a god. Okay, for 7. Lo tisa et shem Yahweh Elohecha l'shao. Usually translated as don't take God's name in vain, but it means don't falsely swear on the name, the explicit name of God. Kilo nakei Yahweh et asher yisad shmo l'shao. Because God will not forgive, God will not make clean he who swears falsely upon his name. Zechoret Yom Shabbat Hadsho. Remember the Shabbat, the Sabbath day, and make it holy. Sheshit Yamim ta'avod v'asit kol melachtecha. 6 days you shall work and do all of your tasks. Yom HaShvi'i Shabbat li Yahweh Elohecha. But the 7th day is a day of rest to Yahweh your God. Lo taseh kol melacha. You shall not do any unnecessary tasks. Ata vincha, you, your son, your daughter, your maidservant, your manservant, your maidservant, your male and female slaves, your animals, and the ger who lives in your gates, who lives among you. Again, showing that a ger is someone who lives among you, in your gates, literally. But in your gates means in your cities, or basically just extension means among you. Okay? So we rest on Shabbat. One of the reasons we rest on Shabbat is so that all these people, as I said many times, who could easily be taken advantage of and made to work like people do in the United States these days, 7 days a week, and on Thanksgiving Day and on Christmas Day and all this kind of stuff. Not that I give a darn about Christmas, but it used to be a day off where people spent with their families. And now people have to work all the time. Because for 6 days Yahweh made the heavens, and the earth, and the sea and everything that is in it, or in them. And he rested on the 7th day. And therefore God blessed the 7th day and made it holy. Okay? So a number of reasons given for the Shabbat. Just like we see in the Torah, there are often multiple reasons given for a particular commandment, for a particular place name, a particular person's name. Okay? It doesn't contradict, as secular scholars may say, it reinforces. Okay? If you have 3 reasons for doing something, then that doesn't contradict, it reinforces it. Verse 12, kabed, et avicha v'et imecha, honor your father and your mother, lima'an yarichun yamecha ala adama, in order that your days will be lengthened on the land, meaning that you'll stay in the land of Israel as a nation, asher Yahweh Elohecha noten lach, which the land which Yahweh, your God, is giving to you. Lo titzach, do not murder. Murder is unjustified killing. Okay. Lo tinaf, do not commit adultery. Committing tinaf specifically means do not sleep with a married woman. Doesn't mean that if you're married to a woman, you can't sleep with another woman as long as she's not married. That's not tinaf. Maybe your wife is gonna, slap you over slap you across the head with a frying pan, but that's not prohibited in the Torah. If you are a married man, you can sleep with other women. But if you're a married woman or an engaged woman, you can only sleep with your husband. If you sleep with another man besides your husband, you're put to death, and that man is put to death, assuming that it's intentional, not rape or trickery or something like that. Lo tignov, do not steal. Lo taneh berecha ad shaker, do not bear false witness against your fellow man. In other words, you don't give false testimony. There's a mitzvah that we'll see, a commandment we'll see later in the Torah, that if you bear false testimony, that which you intended to be the punishment of the person that you bear false testimony against, that should happen to you. So if you falsely accuse someone of murder, then, and let's say that person is to be put to death, so you're put to death instead, which is brilliant. Do not covet, do not be jealous, do not envy your fellow Israelite's house. His wife, avdo, his amato, his female and male slave, shoro v'chamoro, his bull and his donkey, in other words, in everything that your fellow man has. In other words, stick to your, blinders on, live your life, and don't worry about what other people have. You can sleep with your sister wives, you are all one. Yes, you can sleep with your sister wives. That's true. Women are better at foreplay anyway. Whoa. All right, Desiree. Did you have to take it in that direction? All right. Verse 18. So all of the people saw, heard the voices, or literally saw the voices, and the rabbis make a big deal of that. But often we saw recently such an example of where it says ro'eh, and then it's something that's heard. So it just means perceived the voices and literally the torches, but I think it just means the fire or the smoke. But kol shofar, and the voice of the shofar, wa'et hahar ashen, and the mountain going up in smoke. We are wa'yareh ha'am wa'yanu ya'amdu merachok, and the people feared, and they moved and stood. They stood back, stood from afar. They moved back off the mountain. They were scared. Verse 19, وَيَمْرُوا el Moshe daber ta imanu. And they said to Moses, you speak with us, وَنِشْمَعْ and we'll listen. But Ali daber imanu Elohim pen namut. But let not God speak with us lest we die. In other words, it's too much for God to speak to them. So this is the last time God ever speaks directly to the people. From now on, it's only through Moses. People say this is too much for us. And Moses said to the people, Al tir'u ki la'avur nasot etchem ba Elohim. Don't fear, because it's only to test you that God has come. Uba'avur ti'eh yir'ato al panechem. And in order that his fear should be upon your faces, in order that you don't sin. In other words, he really wants to, quite literally, put the fear of God in you so that you'll listen to him for your own good, right? If your father tells you to do something, it's for your own good. Even if you're 10 years old and don't think it's for your own good, it's still your own good. So the people stood back from afar. And Moses went into the darkness, the fog, where God was. And now, so that's the end of the Ten Commandments. That's the end of the last time God ever speaks directly to the people. Who knows what's going to happen in the end of days? Maybe he'll speak to the people again. But from now on, God speaks to Moses, and Moses speaks to the people. And we have a couple more things that God has to say through Moses. Verse 22, V'yomer Yahweh el Moshe kod tomar el bnei Israel. So now God says to Moses, so say to the people of Israel. The people of Israel have requested that God does not speak to them directly. Atem ra'item ki min hashamayim dibarti etchem. You've seen that I spoke to you from the heavens, from the sky. Lo ta'asun iti Elohei kesef. Do not make with me, wa Elohei zahav, gods of silver and gods of gold. Lo ta'asu lechem. Do not do this. Do not do this to yourselves. Okay. Mizbeach adamat seli. You make for me an altar out of earth. וזבחת עליו על את עולותיך ואת שלומך ואת שונאיך ואת בקריך בכל המקום אשר אזכיר את שמי אבוא אליך וברכתיך. So you should to make a long story, when you make an altar, you're to make it out of earth. Or, so again, this is a characteristic of the text that seems like a commandment, make it out of earth. But here we have an alternative. Sorry. Im mizbach avanim taseli. But if you want to make it out of stone, if you want to make the altar out of stone, lo tibneten gazit ki charvcha enafta aleha b'techal aleha. Oh, sorry. Maybe I should drink. Oh boy. But if you want to make it out of stone, then it should not be gazit. Gazit means hewn stone. Because if you whack your sword against it, you will defile it. So there are two choices. Either make it out of earth or make it out of unhewn stone. What does it mean, unhewn stone? It means stones that you just find out, out in the land, and you put them together, just like they do even to this day when they make walls in the land, like stone walls in the land of Israel and probably other places. I used to help a friend make stone walls sometimes, and you just find rocks and you just like fit them into each other until you don't even need concrete. Basically, if you fit them nicely, and you can always find a way to fit one stone into another, or if not, you find another stone and it'll fit, you could build a very strong wall that will not fall down. That's what it's speaking about. לא תעלה במעלות על מזבחי אשר לא תגלה ערוותך עליו. And there should be no steps leading up to my altar. It should be a ramp. And the reason there should be no steps is that when you walk up on those steps, your private parts may be showing. If you walk up a ramp, then your tunic is going to be flush against the ramp and nothing will be exposed. Right? And it's not that the Torah is against sex. Far from it. I mean, David had a bunch of wives, a bunch of concubines. Solomon had 1,000, right? What was it, 700 concubines? It's that sex does not mix. There's a time and a place for sex, and it's not at the tabernacle, the temple, near the altar. The pagans, to this day, but in ancient times, pagan temples often involved sexual rituals. That's why you had temple prostitutes, male and female temple prostitutes, sexual rituals at temples. This is the way the pagans worship their god, by having sexual rituals or having sexual actions as a way to worship their god. Okay, our God wants no part of that. There's a time and there's a place for sex. Sex is great. The Torah is not against sex. The rabbis, well, they're not, even fairness to them, they're not really, but the Torah is really not against sex. It's just you don't do it in the temple or near the temple. You do it where it belongs, in your home. Okay. And that's the end of Exodus 20. And I think we're going to end it for today. It's been over 3.5 hours. I did want to get to the Haftarah, but it ain't going to happen. And my voice is still not 100%. And I think that's enough. But we did get through the Parsha. So any questions, any comments before we end it? I think this has been a really good Torah study. I'm glad to be back. Please tell your friends about the Torah study. If you don't have friends, tell your enemies. If you don't have enemies, make some. And then tell them about it. So, and of course, like, subscribe, all that kind of nice stuff, so we can really get this Torah study going. All right, any kind of questions or any comments before we end it? Hope you enjoyed the study, everyone. We'll go out with some music, and then we're going to call it a day. So let's see what we got. All right, that works.
אוויר הרים צלול כיין וריח אורנים נישא ברוח הערביים עם כל פעמונים ובתרדמת אילן ואבן שבויה בחלומה העיר אשר בדד יושבת ובליבה חומה ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. איכה יבשו בורות המים, כיכר השוק ריקה, ואין פוקדת הר הבית בעיר העתיקה. ובמערות אשר בסלע, והלילות רוחות, ואין יורד אל ים המלח, בדרך יריחו. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. אך בבואי היום לשיר לך ולך לקשור כתרים, קטפונתי מצעיר בנייך ומאחרון המשוררים. כשמך צורבת השפתיים כנשיקת צרב, אם אשכחך ירושלים אשר כולה זהב. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת